What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto hides his true power until his enemies pushed him too far? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. It was night. A full moon shone over the streets where a miniature war was waging. A man ran through the pandemonium leading a woman by the hand towards a dock. Fierce fighting surrounded the two as he continued to weave their way through. The man had gray, almost silver hair and yellow eyes. He wasn't tall, but his muscle mass made him huge. He wore a loose-fitting martial arts gi. A giant mace of some sort was strapped to his back, but he seemed to carry it as if it was little more than a paperweight. A katana was strapped to his right side. A gray wolf tail sticking out of his pants and two wolf ears perched on top his head. The woman was just shy of being as tall as the man. She had bright blonde hair and blue eyes. She wore a white pair of shinobi pants, with a gray shirt that was stretched out over a swollen stomach. She was pregnant. She too had wolf ears and a tail. It was obviously cold outside. You could see steam rising in the air from people breathing or freshly open cuts on bodies. The street and surrounding rooftops had a small layer of snow on them, like a layer of dust on a tabletop. The two reached the boat at the dock. There was no one else on board. The man helped the woman onto the boat and untied it. He put his foot on the boat and pushed it away. The woman started to scream for him to get on, but it was drowned out. Only a few words could be heard, and those few were nearly overpowered by the sounds of the battle waging nearby. As the boat started to slowly float away, the man turned back to the fight. He took the giant battle mace from his back and charged forward, swinging at anything that got too close. P, eep, beep, B-click, HWAHHHHHH. Yawned a young gray-haired boy. It should be against the laws of nature to wake up this early, he said aloud as he got out of bed and stretched, shaking off his sleepiness. The boy was about 5 feet 8 inches with gray, almost silver shoulder-length hair that came down in wild spikes. He walked to the bathroom and stepped into the shower, getting ready for the day. As the water woke him up, his mind floated back to the dream he'd just had. It wasn't like a normal dream. He didn't only remember bits and pieces of it when he woke up. He remembered all of it, everything in vibrant detail like he had seen it in real life. Then there was the fact that it seemed real. He thought everything about it looked familiar, though he couldn't tell because the dream wasn't very long. One other thing he did notice, possibly the most important, was the tails and ears. They were just like his. Could he be related to them in some way? The boy stepped out of the shower and started to brush his teeth. Most of the teeth were normal, but his two canine teeth seemed abnormally long and sharp. He had a horrible scar that marred his eyes. A large X had been cut just above his left eye, stretching across his nose and across his right eye, and vice versa. His eyes had been gouged out, completely ruined, but he never let that stop him. His skin was a light tanned color, from spending a lot of time in the sun. He was also covered in an alarming number of scars. The most unusual characteristics of the young boy, however, were his two wolf ears that stuck up out of his hair and the wolf tail that stuck out of his pants. He was 12-year-old Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto finished brushing his teeth and stepped out of the bathroom. He put on his choice of clothes, a pair of gray cargo pants, a white muscle shirt and a thin, black long-sleeve shirt with a pair of sandals. He put his kunai pouch on his left leg, and a set of dark sunglasses over his eyes to hide his eyes. He ate a quick meal and grabbed his keys. Before heading out the door of his apartment, he brought his hands together and did a few quick signs. Concealment jutsu, Naruto yelled. His tail disappeared, as did his ears, replaced with normal human ears. His scars were gone too. He walked out his door and locked it behind him, heading for the academy. Today was the day he became a genin. Walking through town, Naruto couldn't feel the stares he usually got. It was one of the reasons he liked being out in the mornings. Not a lot of people were up yet. He took to the roofs to get out of the street. He easily hopped from one roof to the next. Despite his age, he was incredibly strong. That, coupled with the fact he had also been weight training since he was 8 and started at the academy, led to him being in great physical condition. The results were excellent in Naruto's opinion. It had been the Kyuubi's idea to start, as a matter of fact. Yes, even with the law the third had set up to prevent the knowledge of the Kyuubi being learned by the new generation. Naruto knew about the Kyuubi, and even talked with her on a regular basis. He was stumped as to why she attacked. She seemed rather nice even if she was a demon. Though he had asked why she attacked before, she would only say, "I'll tell you when you're ready." Naruto was brought out of his mental wanderings when he nearly overjumped the roof he was aiming for. Shaking his head clean of its mental cobwebs, Naruto started to pick up the pace headed for the academy. Naruto hopped off the last roof and landed in a crouch on the ground just outside the academy gate. Standing up, he patted some dust off himself and headed inside. The academy wasn't huge, but it was a decent-sized building. Max capacity, it could probably hold 200 people, but as far as Naruto knew there was never more than 20 or so students in at a time. The building had a running track on one side, and a throwing range in the back. Inside the actual academy were a few weight rooms, a gym, and the classrooms. He got to his own room to hear what sounded like most of the class. For most blind people, it might be hard to find a seat, or be a ninja at all. But Naruto and Kyuubi worked out a new sense of sorts for Naruto. Using Kyuubi's near-infinite chakra, Naruto could create a sort of sphere around him that left a mental imprint of what things looked like in his mind. It was almost like blinking as fast as you could while walking. When he was standing still, he would get a constant picture of what was around him. When he or something else moved, he would get a bunch of red-tinted, fast-paced imprints as stuff moved into or out of his chakra sphere. Just because he had this sense didn't mean he couldn't fight without it. The Kyuubi had taught him various blind fighting styles from the time it was alive, along with some ninjutsu, but not a lot. Looking around, Naruto found an open seat next to Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke wasn't that bad of a guy in Naruto's opinion, he was just too cold for him to become friends with. Not to mention he was a stuck-up prick to most everyone. Naruto walked over and sat down next to him. Through some unspoken agreement, neither acknowledged the other's presence, and they were both content. Just as Naruto had started to think back to his dream, he heard them coming. Before he actually saw them, it sounded like a miniature stampede taking place in the halls. As the sound made its way closer to the room, Naruto could hear heavy breathing and yelling. A second later, two people burst through the door. They were both girls Naruto's age. One had bright pink hair that fell down to her lower back and green eyes. She had a larger than normal forehead. Her build was small and light, with white skin. She wore a pink dress with black shorts. The other girl had blonde hair and a ponytail that was around the same length as the first girl's. She had blue eyes. The girl wore a purple dress with what appeared to be medical tape underneath it. Sakura Haruno and Yamanaka Ino. They were both really loud. "I was here first, Ino pig." Sakura yelled at her rival. "Yeah right, I was first by at least a few inches." Ino yelled back. The squabble continued for a few moments until Sakura spotted Sasuke and made a beeline for him. Naruto sighed inwardly and decided to try and be friendly with the girl. "Hello Haruno's move Naruto." Sakura cut off, pushing Naruto out of his seat. Naruto sat on the floor for a moment, and then his eyes started to twitch slightly. Naruto took a deep breath and counted to 10, letting his anger dissipate before moving. Chanting his mantra of, today's the last day, in his mind, he stood up. Looking around he saw Hinata. Naruto made his way over to her and gave her a smile. "Ohio Hinata-chan, mind if I sit here?" he asked. "Ohio en Naruto-kun." "No, I don't mind." Hinata replied. Naruto turned to the girl next to him and asked, "How are you today Hinata-chan?" Hinata had short blue hair and white eyes. What skin you could see was a pale, almost ivory white. She was never seen without her bulky jacket and she usually wore a pair of shinobi pants. I am fine na Naruto-kun," she replied. Naruto liked to talk to Hinata quite a bit. She was much easier on the ears than girls like Sakura and Ino, and she was always kind to him. She had been one of his first friends at the academy, along with Shikamaru, Choji, Iruka, Shino and Kiba, and Shino. "All right class, settle down. Today is the day of the exams. I am not one for procrastinating, so let's get started," Iruka said. Iruka was a kind man and the father Naruto never had. He wore the typical Chunin outfit. But he had a distinguishing scar that ran across his nose. He walked around and passed out the papers, then walked back to the front of the class. "All right class, Mizuki will be watching you while you take your test." In the meantime, I will be in the room over testing Naruto. Does anyone need anything before we begin? Sakura raised her hand. Yes, Sakura? Iruka asked. How come Naruto gets to take the test separate from everyone else? Sakura asked. Because I am incapable of reading. Naruto answered. A random boy started laughing. Ahaha, Naruto's too stupid to read. The majority of the class, the exceptions being Hinata, because of her crush, Shino. Because he's Shino, his other friends and Sasuke because he didn't care, broke out into laughter. Naruto simply smiled and waited for the ruckus to die down. When it did, he spoke up again. There's a difference between being too stupid to read and being incapable. The nerve in my eye that connects to my brain, that would normally allow me to read, is underdeveloped. Where I can read maybe 2-3 words, I cannot read full sentences or paragraphs, nor can I write them. Naruto lied. Any other questions or bright comments? Naruto asked. Standing up, he bade good luck to Hinata and followed Iruka out of the classroom. Kinda harsh, don't y'all think? Iruka asked once they put some distance between themselves and the classroom. He'll have forgotten about it by lunch. Naruto replied. Probably, Iruka agreed. Iruka opened a door for Naruto and had him take a seat at one of the empty desks. All right Naruto, take a seat and we'll get started. 45 minutes later. Okay, we're finished here. Let's go round up the others for the taijutsu portion of the exam. Iruka said. Naruto nodded and followed Iruka out of the room and to the classroom door. Iruka stuck his head in to find everyone finished. Okay class, follow me. We're headed outside for the taijutsu portion of the exam. The students got up and filed out of the room, following Iruka out back to the throwing range where there was plenty of room. Naruto waited until Hinata walked out of the building so he could walk next to her. All right class, we are now going to take the taijutsu portion of the exam. Please write your name on a piece of paper and put it in the box, we're going to do random selections. Iruka explained, holding a box and a few sheets of paper. Looking to his left, Naruto found that Hinata hadn't wandered away from him like she usually did. Anyo. Hinata, could you do me a favor and put my name in the ballot for me? Naruto asked. Susure en Naruto, why can't ya do it yourself Naruto? Kiba butted in. Naruto let loose a sigh and answered. Do you even remember what I said an hour ago? Naruto asked. What did you say an hour ago? Kiba asked, looking confused. And you called me stupid. Naruto deadpanned. Kiba seethed at this. Anyo. I filled out why your paper and Naruto-kun. Hinata chimed in. Naruto turned to her and gave her a wolfish smile. Thanks Hinata-chan, Naruto said. Naruto could almost feel the heat of Hinata's blush radiating off of her. And he could also smell. Well, yeah. Naruto wasn't stupid, even if he was blind he could tell Hinata liked him. He liked her too, but he'd never asked her out on a date or anything because of the villagers and even some ninja. He also didn't really like getting too close to anyone, with the exception of Iruka and the third Hokage. It was like they say, once bitten, twice shy. Naruto had opened up and let too many people in just for them to stomp on his feelings later. He liked Hinata and his other friends, but he wasn't willing to open up to them. The exam began with Choji and some other kid Naruto didn't know fighting. Choji ended up winning when he threw his considerable bulk into a rather powerful punch. Another noteworthy match was Shikamaru's. He just lazily dodged every which way until his opponent ran out of steam, giving Shikamaru the chance to walk up to the guy and chop his neck, knocking him unconscious. Shino's fight would have been interesting to watch, if he hadn't gotten a girl who forfeited as soon as possible. Hinata ended up fighting Sakura and practically tore her apart. She seemed almost angry with the girl for some reason. Finally, Naruto heard his name called. Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto groaned. What's the matter Naruto, scared? Kiba called. Of Sasuke, no, of his fangirls, terrified. Naruto answered. Kiba had to agree, you didn't fight just Uchiha Sasuke. You fought him and a rabid group of girls if you so much as touched him. The two walked into the center of the ring and took up stances. Sasuke's fan club cheering wildly for him, and Naruto wishing he didn't have sensitive hearing. Until he just barely heard Hinata cheer him on, along with Kiba, Choji, and a half-hearted Shikamaru. Naruto thought he might have even heard a kick his ass. From Shino, but when he looked said stoic boy was looking off into the distance, seemingly nonchalant. Okay. This is a taijutsu match, you may each use a single kunai if you wish, but if I think things are getting out of hand, I'll stop the match. Iruka said. Iruka threw the kunai part in for the tradition of just holding one to the other's throat and saying, "You lose," like all the other matches. He wasn't expecting both the boys to bring their kunai out from the very beginning and start a knife fight. I shouldn't have said that. Iruka thought to himself. Naruto and Sasuke ripped a kunai out of their holders simultaneously. They circled each other for a moment before Sasuke charged in. Sasuke brought the knife in to stab Naruto in the side, but Naruto tossed his kunai into his other hand and grabbed Sasuke's wrist before he could make contact. Naruto grabbed his own kunai and tried to get Sasuke in the side as well. Sasuke grabbed Naruto's wrist and the two were deadlocked, fighting for power in the situation. Before Sasuke could react, Naruto pulled him forward and smashed his forehead into his. Sasuke, disoriented slightly, loosened his grip long enough for Naruto to wrench his hand away and bring up his foot, brutally kicking Sasuke in the side and knocking him back a few steps. Naruto pushed his advantage and followed after putting his kunai in his mouth. He sent a barrage of punches and kicks that the Uchiha could barely follow. Naruto faked a left jab and brought his right hand up in a vicious uppercut, knocking Sasuke off his feet. Sasuke got back up and charged in again. This time he did a Bushin jutsu, creating two of himself. Shit, Naruto swore. Iruka tried to call off the match but Sasuke had already closed the distance by half. Well, let's narrow the odds. Naruto thought to himself. Naruto took his kunai and threw it at the far left Bushin. The kunai harmlessly passed through it. Okay, so he's either the middle one or the far right one. Naruto thought. He prepared to block the far right Sasuke, that way if it was the middle Sasuke that was real, he'd have to move the kunai across his body before he could stab Naruto, and give him enough time to pull off his move. If the far right one was Sasuke, then what he was about to do was gonna hurt like a bitch. Naruto sprinted towards both Sasuke's head-on. The distance closed quickly. 10 meters, 5 meters, 2 meters. Right as Naruto was on top of them, he threw up both his arms at neck level. The Sasuke on his left had been moving to try and stab Naruto, but the split-second difference of having to have reached across his body with his left hand was all the time Naruto needed to deal him a vicious clothesline. Sasuke flipped once in midair before hitting the ground like a sack of potatoes, knocked unconscious from all the breath being forcefully pushed out of his body. There was a moment of silence before a loud whoop ripped through the air, followed shortly after by applause and whistles from the boys with glowers and death threats from the girls. Hell yeah, knock that arrogant bastard down a peg or two. Kiba roared, only to be seconds later enveloped by a wave of angry kunoichis. Shino gave a silent nod of approval while Choji and Shikamaru were sporting some wide grins. Hinata had a shy smile on her face as Naruto came back over to his group of friends. Way to go Naruto, Choji praised. You realize that Sasuke could have been on the right and not in the middle right Naruto? Shikamaru asked. Yeah, I had to take a risk on that, Naruto said, grinning sheepishly. Troublesome, Shikamaru replied. After Sasuke was revived, the matches continued until everyone had fought. Good work everyone, Iruka said loudly, his voice carrying over the students and getting their attention. It's now time for the final portion of the exam, let's head back inside. The class started to shuffle back into the building. As they walked in, Sasuke sent Naruto a murderous glare, though Naruto seemed oblivious to it as he talked and laughed with his friends. Once they arrived back at class, Naruto reassumed his position next to Hinata and Iruka told the class about what was going to happen next. Alright class, here's what we're going to do. You're each going to go into the adjacent room where Mizuki and I are going to grade your final performance. You will perform the Kawarmi, Bushin, and Henge jutsus. First up, Akamichi Choji. As time went on, more and more people's names were called to go in and take the test. After a little while Naruto could no longer take the boredom and fell asleep, slouching in his chair. A few in the class noticed this, namely Hinata, who was next to Naruto at the time, Sakura and Ino. Sakura and Ino didn't really like Naruto or consider him dating material. But they had always been curious about the glasses. What could he possibly have to hide under them? Hey, for head girl. Ino whispered, getting her friend's attention. What Ino pig? Sakura asked, curious despite their rivalry. Ino pointed at Naruto and said, once Hinata goes in to take the exam, why don't we see what's under Naruto's glasses? Ino asked. Sakura thought for a moment. She knew if she was Naruto, she wouldn't want her personal space intruded upon. But this was just Naruto, he was probably just wearing the glasses to show off or be cool. She told herself. She ignored the voice in the back of her head telling her that if that what she was thinking about doing was wrong and so on. Her inner Sakura violently crushed the voice, silencing it for the time being. Sakura nodded and the two sat and waited. A few minutes later, Sakura was called into the exam. She came back out sporting her new headband and went over to Ino to continue waiting. Hyuga Hinata. Iruka's voice called out. Hinata eeped slightly and stood up hurriedly, then walking into the room. As soon as the door closed, Sakura and Ino were up and moving towards Naruto, being as stealthy as possible. It wasn't difficult to navigate their way to him. Few students were left in the room, and those who were didn't care about what they were doing. The two got about 10 feet away from Naruto and slowed, making sure they didn't step on any loose floorboards or bump into any chairs. 5 feet away, their hearts were beating slightly faster as they got closer, starting to get nervous about being caught. Now they were within reaching distance of Naruto's face. Sakura looked at Ino and they both nodded. Ino started to slowly reach out for Naruto's glasses. Her palms were starting to sweat and she could hear her heart pounding in her ears. A heavy silence had seemed to settle over the room. Just as she was about to grab the glasses, a hand fell on her and Sakura's shoulders. They both jumped and turned to see Shino Aburame. Respect. The glasses, he said in his usual monotone voice, though, if one listened closely it seemed like he might have had an annoyed tone in his voice. The two girls nodded vigorously, too creeped out to do anything else. He then steered the two away from Naruto and shoved them out the classroom door. Hinata came back from the room and sat next to Naruto again, wearing a new headband around her neck. She seemed to be sitting a little straighter than normal. Uchiha Sasuke, Mizuki called. The dark-haired boy stood up and made his way into the room. Since the teachers appeared to be going by alphabetical order, Hinata saw fit to wake Naruto up before his name was called. That and she wanted him to see her new headband. Anyo. Na Naruto-kun, wake up, why you're up next. Hinata said, shaking Naruto a few times. After she realized she was touching him she blushed and her hand shot back like she'd been burned. A sleepy, 5 more minutes, was his reply. Producing a slight sweat drop, she decided to try again. Naruto-kun, it's time to get up. Hinata said again. 5 more minutes. Naruto said again. Hinata sighed to herself. What do I have to do to get you up, Naruto-kun? She asked to no one in particular. Put alarm clock next to my ear. He replied, surprising her. Hinata frowned slightly. Was he playing a trick on her? No, Naruto wasn't the type to joke in a serious situation, like the Genin exam. Was he possibly talking in his sleep? Hinata wondered to herself. Worth a shot, she thought. Naruto-kun, are you asleep? Hinata asked. Naruto nodded his head. Thinking for a moment, Hinata came up with another question. Naruto-kun, do you use a genjutsu to hide something? Hinata asked. Again, he nodded. Naruto-kun would never admit to that. He must really be asleep and answering questions. Hinata thought excitedly. Is there a girl you like? Hinata stuttered slightly. Yay, Naruto replied. Hinata felt her heart beat a little faster. Does she live in Konoha? Hinata asked. Naruto nodded. Hinata's heart picked up a little more speed, and she started to get that nervous feeling in her chest. Does she go to the academy? Hinata asked. Naruto hummed unconsciously. She had to wonder how his glasses stayed on when he did that. She filed it away for a time when she didn't feel like she was going to have an anxiety attack. Hinata fell quiet for a moment as she tried to think of another question. She knew the question she wanted to ask, but she couldn't get the courage to just blurt it out, so she was trying to narrow it down. And then a thought hit her. Most of the girls in the school have grown their hair out for the Uchiha. Does she have long hair? Naruto shook his head this time, and Hinata could feel her chest clench. Her hands started to shake and she felt faint, her heart was racing now. As she was about to ask another question, the door slid open and Sasuke walked out of the classroom, not even glancing up on his way out. But Hinata didn't notice, her attention was focused on Naruto. Iruka came out behind him and breathed in deep, preparing to yell at Naruto for sleeping. Na thump. Iruka was cut off as a kunai embedded itself in the wood next to his head that had a note attached saying, "Quiet." Iruka traced the trajectory back to Shino, who held his finger to his mouth in the shish position and pointed at Naruto and Hinata. Iruka raised an eyebrow at Shino and nodded, turning his attention to the sleeping boy and tomato-faced girl. "Do you know who is talking to you?" Hinata asked. Naruto nodded his head. Hinata held his breath and took the plunge. "Is it me?" she asked. The boy nodded his head up and down again, and that was all Hinata could take. Her head lit up like a volcano, from color to heat, and she was floored in a dead faint. Iruka let loose a chuckle at that. "Naruto, wake up," he yelled. Naruto jumped up out of his seat, spinning around wildly. Finally, his focus landed on Iruka and he calmed down. He also noticed Hinata on the floor. "What happened to Hinata, Iruka-sensei?" Naruto asked, still trying to wake up. Iruka grinned and said, "Nothing, Naruto, but come on, you're the last one to take the exam." Naruto nodded to him and said, "Be there in a sec." Iruka nodded and walked back into the exam room. Naruto picked Hinata up and sat her down on a chair, then followed after Iruka. After Naruto stepped into the room and shut the door, Iruka gave him his first test. "Okay Naruto, give us a kawarmi," Iruka asked. Naruto nodded and brought his hands together, making the ram sign. There was a puff of smoke and he replaced himself with a potted plant in the room. Iruka nodded in approval and wrote something down on a clipboard. "Next up, henge," Iruka said. Naruto brought his hands together and transformed into a perfect Iruka. Iruka nodded again and wrote his score down. "And last up, Bushin." Once again, Naruto made the ram sign and gathered his chakra. There was a huge puff of smoke and the room was filled with Bushin. Naruto, we only needed 3. Iruka said, slightly in awe. Naruto smiled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. "Sorry Iruka-sensei, case of nerves," Naruto said. Iruka smiled and accepted the excuse. "Well, congratulations Naruto, you pass. Can you stay after class for a minute or two?" Iruka asked. "Sure," Naruto replied. Mizuki left the classroom, leaving behind Iruka, Naruto, and an unconscious Hinata. "What is it you were wanting, Iruka-sensei?" Naruto asked. "Well, I know you don't have any family to celebrate passing with, so I'm offering to treat you to ramen to celebrate," Iruka answered. Naruto's face cracked into a wolfish grin as he tackled Iruka in a hug. "And here, this is yours," Iruka said, taking his headband off and giving it to Naruto. Naruto smiled and took off his glasses. Iruka had seen the scar before, and was glad he didn't see it now. He had to know about Naruto being blind in order to teach him, but he had never gotten used to that scar. Whenever he saw the scar, it made him cringe something awful. Naruto took the headband and placed it over his eyes, tying it tight like a blindfold. Iruka smirked slightly. "Interesting style there, Naruto." Naruto laughed a bit and then remembered Hinata. "What are we going to do with Hinata?" Naruto asked. Well, we could wake her up and invite her along," Iruka suggested. Naruto frowned slightly. He'd love to have someone to celebrate with, Hinata in particular, but he was slightly afraid of the consequences. Shrugging it off, Naruto decided he'd cross that bridge when he got to it. "Sure," Naruto replied. Walking over to Hinata, he tried to gently shake her awake. "Hinata, hey, wake up," Naruto said. Hinata slowly woke up slowly. Looking around, Hinata saw Naruto and Iruka. "Hey, congratulations on becoming a genin, Iruka and I are going for ramen to celebrate, wanna come along?" Naruto asked. Hinata sat there and blinked a couple of times, not really awake yet. Then she realized she'd been asked a question. Sure Naruto-kun," Hinata replied. "Well come on, let's go," Naruto said, grabbing her hand and all but dragging her out the door, Iruka close at their heels. As the trio made their way into town, Hinata's brain slowly started working again, taking things in small steps. The first thing that came through was, "Naruto-kun likes me." Shortly after that came the thought of, and he noticed the headband. Then her thoughts started to catch up with the here and now her. "Naruto-kun invited me out to celebrate with him and Iruka, could it be considered an unorthodox date?" Now she was slightly ecstatic. And to top it all off, he's holding my hand. This is the best day of my life. Hinata thought. Blushing somewhat, she looked up at Naruto and noticed something was different. Hey, he's not wearing his glasses. He's using his headband as a blindfold? How can he see where he's going? Hinata wondered as Naruto wove their way through the busy street. What's with all the glares? Hinata thought. At first she thought they were directed at her, which caused her to shrink under their gaze somewhat. Then she noticed that they were actually glaring at Naruto, though he didn't seem to notice, aside from the fact that he's blindfolded. Naruto-kun. Why is everyone glaring at you? Hinata asked. Naruto's face fell for a moment, and it seemed like he was thinking. What should I tell her? Damn, I knew we should have taken the roofs instead of the street. Naruto thought to himself. Well, I don't want to tell her about Kyuubi. Not to mention she's probably curious about the blindfold. And if she's ever used the Byakugan on me before, she'll be curious about the Genjutsu too. I know Hinata's smart, she may very well be able to put this together herself even if I didn't tell her. I don't want to talk about it. Naruto muttered. Understanding she'd hit a touchy subject, Hinata let it drop for the time being, plus they were now at the ramen stand. Hey old man, one beef ramen to start off with. Naruto yelled, catching the chef's attention. The chef looked to be in about his mid-40s, maybe his 50s. Though he looked like he was in good shape, perhaps an ex-ninja. He always squinted though, as if he was trying to see something while looking in the direction of the sun. His name was Tucci. Naruto, how ya doing boy? The chef asked. Great, I finally got genin today. Naruto exclaimed. Oh, congratulations, this first bowl is on the house. The chef said. This your girlfriend? He teased, spotting Hinata. Said girl let out a small eep and started blushing. This is Hinata-chan, and no, she isn't my girlfriend. Naruto said, introducing them to each other. Hinata seemed to be a bit disappointed though. Hello Naruto-kun, said a girl. She had brown hair that went down to her shoulders and slightly brownish skin. She was older than Naruto and had a medium build with noticeable assets. Hey Ayame-chan, Naruto greeted. Who is your friend Naruto-kun? Ayame asked, eyeing Hinata carefully. This is Hinata-chan, Naruto said, oblivious to the small staring match that had initiated. Hinata-chan, this is Ayame-chan. Naruto introduced. A pleasure to meet you. Ayame said, holding her hand out. Though she was thinking, if you think you're taking my Naruto-kun away from me, you got another thing coming. Likewise, Hinata said firmly, though she was thinking more along the lines of, you're not getting Naruto-kun unless it's over my dead body. They took each other's hands and started to squeeze harder than necessary. Iruka had only been observing to this point and decided to start instigating, one of his favorite pastimes. And, it could also be payback for all the pranks Naruto had played on him. So, Iruka decided to play an ultimate prank on him, multiple girlfriends. It's good to see you two get along so well. I'm sure you're going to be seeing more of each other with Naruto dragging Hinata here every other day. Iruka said, getting a blush from Hinata and a crestfallen look from Ayame. Tucci, catching on to the game, said, oh yes, this is Naruto's favorite place to be, him and Ayame are quite close. Now it was Hinata's turn to look crestfallen and Ayame's turn to smile triumphantly. Tucci set Naruto's order down in front of him and the genin tore into it, oblivious to his surroundings. Time to go for the kill. Iruka thought, grinning like the Cheshire cat. I wonder who will get the first date. Iruka said. That was the last straw. Hinata and Ayame started to stare each other down, sizing each other up. Hook, line, and sinker. Iruka thought, happily slurping away at his ramen. Tucci, however, decided to give one last poke. Who knows, maybe he'll take both of them out. Tucci said, wearing a grin to match Iruka's. 2 light bulbs went off above the girls' heads. Share? Ayame asked, giving a questionable look. Thinking to herself for a moment, Hinata weighed the pros and cons. Bad side. I have to share, that's really all there is. Good side, I have an ally, one less enemy, someone who could help me set up a date with Naruto. Hinata thought to herself. She came to a conclusion, smirking. Hinata nodded to and shook again, in a more friendlier manner this time. At this point in time, Naruto's wolf instincts kicked in, telling him he was in danger. Had he been able to see, he would have found Iruka and the old man looking like the cat who just swallowed the canary. Along with Ayame and Hinata, who were looking at him with that dangerous glint in their eyes. Swallowing the noodles he had in his mouth, he said, "Did I miss something?" "Oh, nothing important, Naruto-kun," Ayame said, grinning mischievously. Naruto's, "Get the hell out of there." Sense was tingling, and it had never been wrong before. But what could it be? He knew all the people there, and they were friendly, he trusted all of them, kinda. So, going against his better judgment, he said, "Oh, okay," and set back to work on his ramen. Poor bastard, Iruka thought, slurping up the rest of his noodles. He almost felt sorry for him. Almost. This was Iruka's revenge for all those pranks. Hey, step 1. Start the chain, complete. Iruka thought to himself. After the initial setup of Iruka's payback, the trio stayed for quite a bit. Hinata and Ayame talking amongst themselves, shooting conspiratorial glances at Naruto here and there, while Naruto, Iruka and Teuchi talked about genin teams, old war, prank stories and the like. Now it was starting to get late and it was time for Naruto to head home. "Well everyone, I am having a blast and all, but it's getting late, Hinata and I have team assignments tomorrow." Naruto said, "Oh, I completely forgot." Hinata said, standing up to leave. "Hey, you didn't stutter." Naruto praised, giving her a smile. "I didn't? What y'all? No," Hinata said, smiling back. "Come on Hinata, I'll walk you back, since it was partly my fault you're out late." Naruto said, walking out the curtain. Hinata nodded and bade goodbye to her new friend Ayame, Iruka, and Teuchi. Iruka left the opposite way to go back to his house, leaving Hinata and Naruto alone. The two started walking. The streets weren't nearly empty now that it was later in the day. The sun setting and casting a reddish hue over the sky. The two neared the Hyuga Estates gate and said their goodbyes. Walking away back towards his apartment, Naruto heard a scuffle. Making his way silently over to the scene, Naruto found Mizuki fighting a Junin. The Junin seemed to be out of her element somewhat, as if she usually didn't fight hand to hand. Mizuki had the upper hand in the fight since the Junin was trying to subdue him, yet not harm the scroll strapped to his back in the process. Naruto brought his hands together in the ram sign and focused. "Kawarmi no jutsu," he muttered. There was a poof of smoke and Naruto had replaced himself with the scroll, surprising the two. Before Mizuki could act, Naruto put his arms under Mizuki's and brought his hands up to mesh around the back of his neck, effectively holding the Chunin from moving. "Hey, I got him, now hurry up and finish him off before he gets loose," Naruto yelled, straining against Mizuki. The Junin nodded and pulled out a kunai. Walking up to Mizuki calmly, the Junin slit his throat, killing him instantly. The Junin was a woman who looked to be in her 20s somewhere. It was hard to tell. She dressed like she was a younger, rebellious individual, wearing an outfit that looked to be made of medical tape. Yet she seemed older from the way she carried herself. She had black hair and red eyes, with a shapely body that showed through the tape. "Thanks for the help, Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto supplied, grinning slightly. The woman smiled back, recognizing him as the Kyuubi container. He didn't seem that bad. "Thanks for the help, Naruto-san. Normally I wouldn't need it, but I couldn't risk putting him in a genjutsu and him flailing around and possibly harming the scroll," the woman said, frowning slightly. "Anytime. Yuri Kurenai," Kurenai said. "Anytime Kurenai-san," Naruto replied. "Well, I gotta run. Need to get some sleep before they pick teams tomorrow. Tell Gigi I said hi," Naruto said as he walked away. Weird kid, but nice. I wonder what was with the genjutsu he was using? Kurenai wondered, strapping the scroll to her back and heading back to the tower. An Anbu team would come by sometime later to dispose of the body. Naruto made it back to his apartment and unlocked the door. Stepping inside, he stopped and listened for a full 10 minutes before moving again. He didn't want any surprises. Shutting his door and locking it, Naruto released his genjutsu and took a shower. Stepping out, he put on his pajamas and slipped into bed, asleep nearly as soon as his head hit the pillow. Naruto found himself in the middle of a pine forest. There was snow on the ground, and hanging from the boughs of the great trees. It was dark and a full moon shone over the forest, reflecting off the snow, bathing the ground in a soothing white light. The light reflecting off the snow in the trees make it seem as though they had been decorated with white garland. Several different tracks littered the ground, ranging from the small prints of squirrels and chipmunks to the bigger prints of deer and caribou. A cool breeze flittered past, pulling some of the powdery snow up in the air, seemingly as if ghostly white spirits were dancing in the woods. Then the scene changed. Naruto watched the silver-haired man again, rushing into fights with his massive club. He used the weapon to great effect, snapping arms and legs, easily crushing some of his smaller opponents whole. Of the people fighting, Naruto could make out three factions. One was the one the silver-haired man was fighting for. Naruto could tell they were on the same side because many of them had wolf ears and tails. Another faction were various townspeople, who seemed to be fighting alongside the half-wolves. Nothing defining about them, just your average villagers. Then there was the opposing faction. Naruto cringed somewhat. Their defining trait was that they all had some weird thing on their backs. The things looked insectal, only much bigger, roughly the size of a travel pack, with black skin, and weird mouths on what appeared to be their backs. Looking closer, Naruto found that the things had some sort of tentacles that had pierced the people's skin. It looked like the tentacles traveled all the way down the back, parallel with the spinal cord. Aside from the things on their backs, these people looked almost normal, like normal humans. But they were ridiculously strong, flinging people away from them like rag dolls. However, it didn't seem as though they were very good at actual fighting. Then there were the things that looked like half-transformed people. They varied in all forms, shapes, sizes, textures, and so forth. Some had half-formed horns growing out of various places on their bodies. Bright red sores surrounding the bases of them. Some had extra limbs, others seemed to be covered in a layer of mucus. Basically, creatures from your nightmares. They all had two things in common. They had those things on their backs, like the most human of them, and they all had a strange symbol on their body at one point or another. It resembled the spade on a playing card with a triangle in the center. It was a sickly yellow-looking color. Then there were the worst of what was there. Monsters was probably the only word that could remotely describe them. Some were humanoid, others seemed like creatures out of a horror story. None of them had any human characteristics whatsoever. They varied in size, big, small, fast, strong. They were all deadly. Sharp, ripping fangs, strong, piercing claws. Thick, muscled appendages. Some had sword-like arms while others seemed to have stopped halfway into changing into some sort of animal. All had a haunting, soulless gaze that stared into your very soul. The one thing they all had in common was the now bright yellow spade mark somewhere on their bodies. E.P. B. Beep. B-click. Sitting up, Naruto shook his head, waking up. Another dream. Naruto asked himself. Getting up out of bed, he set about his morning rituals. His mind straying back to the dream here and there. He cringed at the thought of those monster things. Man, I'd hate to have to fight one of those. Naruto muttered to himself as he finished dressing himself. Putting on his concealment jutsu, Naruto headed out the door and towards the academy to meet his Junin sensei and team. Walking into the classroom, Naruto found a seat in the back, in between his friends Shikamaru and Choji. Naruto caught Hinata waving at him and he waved back. "Good morning Shikamaru, Choji." Naruto greeted, sitting down. "Morning Naruto," Choji said. Shikamaru gave a lazy MMF of acknowledgement from his arms. Once everyone was in the class, Iruka stood up. "Good morning class, today's the last day I see any of you. So let me just say that it's been a pleasure getting to know you all over the years and I hope you all become fine ninja." Iruka said. "Okay class, team assignments are. Team 7. Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto's ears perked up, hoping one of his friends would be on his team. Haruno Sakura. There was a loud groan as Sakura hit her head on the table. "I got stuck with Naruto," she thought. "Uchiha Sasuke." Iruka finished. There was a loud squeal of delight, 2 depressed groans, and an angry outburst. The squeal came from none other than Sakura, who was ecstatic about having Sasuke on her team. The outburst came from Yamanaka Ino, saying how unfair that was. One groan and a loud bang came from Naruto as he slammed his head against the table. "Sasuke and his number 1 fangirl. It's official. Kami hates me." Naruto muttered. "Ah, don't feel bad Naruto, look at the good side." Choji said optimistically. "Good side?" Naruto questioned. "Yeah," Shikamaru cut in. "Just let Sasuke get hurt once and Sakura will fight your battles for you." They got a small round of chuckles out of this. The last, though not quite as audible groan, came from Hinata. I was hoping to be on Naruto-kun's team. Hinata thought. Team 8. Kiba Inuzuka, Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata. Iruka called. No objections there. Kiba thought to himself. Quote. Were Shino's thoughts. At least I'm with people I know. Hinata thought. Team 10. Akamichi Choji, Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino. Choji grinned since he was on the same team as his best friend, as did Shikamaru to a point. Both of these grins flew off their faces, traded for scowls of pain as Ino shrieked. I'm stuck on a team with a fat ass and a lazy ass. Iruka ignored her and went on to say. These assignments are permanent unless you want to quit, or if you die. There were a few audible gulps here, but Iruka continued. Well, that's all for me. Stay here until your Junin-sensei comes to pick you up. Iruka said, walking out of the room. The class was buzzing slightly with conversations as new teams got to know each other or friends talked about how they wished they'd gotten on each other's teams. Naruto had decided to go and talk to Team 8 since Ino was currently trying to get acquainted with Shikamaru and Choji. Hey, stop eating and talk to me. And would you actually sit up and pay attention while I am talking? Ino bickered. It seemed like a rather one-sided conversation. Walking over to Kiba, Shino and Hinata, Naruto sat down. Boy Naruto. You got boned with teams, didn't you? Kiba asked. Hinata blushed from embarrassment at his choice of words while Shino smacked him upside the head. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Naruto said. So, any ideas on who your sensei is? Naruto asked. As if on K, the door slid open and a woman called out. Team 8? Turning around with the others, Naruto found Kurenai standing in the doorway. Hello Kurenai-san, Naruto said, giving a wolfish grin. Kurenai blinked once and saw Naruto. She smiled slightly and greeted him back. Hello Naruto, are you part of Team 8? Kurenai asked. Nah, wish I was though. Naruto said, muttering the last part under his breath. Team 8 is Hinata-chan, Kiba, and Shino here. Naruto said, pointing his friends out individually. Hello, I am Yuri Kurenai, your Junin-sensei, Kurenai said. Anyo. How do you know Kurenai-sensei Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, almost sounding afraid. I know he said he likes me. Kinda, but what if he's into older women? Before Hinata's thoughts could get any further, Kurenai spoke up. Oh, Naruto helped me apprehend Mizuki yesterday. Kurenai answered. Mizuki-sensei? What did he do? Kiba asked. He stole the scroll of sealing from the Hokage tower, Kurenai explained. And Naruto helped apprehend him? Shino asked, slightly raising an eyebrow. I didn't do much, I just held him in place while Kurenai-san finished him off. Naruto said. I don't think Naruto understands the fact that a genin shouldn't be physically capable of restraining a Chunin-level ninja. Unless you're Guy's student. Kurenai thought to herself, unconsciously flinching upon seeing the bright green jumpsuit in her mind's eye. Well, I'd love to stay and chat, but we had to get going team. Kurenai said. Later guys. Naruto called out after them. Nothing interesting really happened after Kurenai came and went. Team 10 was collected by a chain smoker who, Naruto found was related to the Hokage, Satobi Asuma. Finally, Team 7 was the last team in the room. Getting bored, Naruto decided he'd do some exercises. Stretching out a bit first, he got on his hands and feet and started to do push-ups. Sasuke noticed and came over, Sakura following after. What are you doing, Dobi? Sasuke asked. I have a name you know. Naruto replied, continuing his push-ups as if he hadn't been interrupted. Answer Sasuke's question, Naruto. Sakura shouted. Naruto decided to ignore them until Sasuke could part with some of his pride. Letting loose a sigh, Sasuke asked. What are you doing, Naruto? Grinning slightly at his personal victory, Naruto spoke. Well, I got tired of waiting on our sensei, so I decided I could train to pass the time. Naruto explained, switching from push-ups to sit-ups. Wanna join? Naruto asked. Sasuke replied, sitting down and beginning sit-ups himself. Sakura stood there for a moment, looking slightly lost. Sakura, if you want to join us you don't have to wait for an invitation. Naruto said. Sakura seemed to ease a bit and stretched before beginning to do sit-ups herself. And so it continued like that for the next 2 hours. Naruto would lead them through one exercise until they got tired, and then switch to a different one. As 2 hours came to an end, Sakura was panting loudly as she laid on her back, staring at the ceiling. Sasuke was sweating and breathing quickly himself. Naruto had a light sweat worked up and didn't seem likely to be winded anytime soon. "Geez Naruto, pant. Pant, you still going?" Sakura asked. "I train a lot," Naruto answered simply, switching back to push-ups. "Stamina freak," she muttered, getting back to push-ups herself. Unnoticed to them, well, most of them, kinda hard for Naruto not to notice with his chakra sense, a man walked into the room. He had tall, silver hair. Most of his face was covered with a mask and his headband, but one eye was visible. He wore the standard Junin attire. He spotted the trio working out and decided to stand and watch for a bit. After a few minutes, the silver-haired one spoke up. "Yano-sensei, if y'all wanna join, you don't have to wait for an invite," Naruto said as he continued to pump out push-ups. Sakura lost balance in the middle of a push-up and fell to the floor while Sasuke's head whipped over to look at their sensei. "Ah, no thank you," the man said, studying them for a minute. "Which one of you led this little exercise group?" the man asked. Naruto said, "I did," while Sasuke and Sakura pointed at him. "I see. My first impression of you guys is, you're interesting. Meet on the roof in 2 minutes," the man said before disappearing in a poof of smoke. Team 7 made their way out of the classroom and up to the roof where their sensei was leaning against the railing. "Okay, since we're a team from now on, we're gonna introduce ourselves to each other," the man explained. "Ladies first," the man said, pointing at Sakura. Sakura looked unsure and asked, "Why don't you go first and show us how it's done, sensei?" "Me?" the man asked. Shrugging, he said, "Well, let's see. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I like a lot of things. I don't dislike much. I have hobbies and my dreams are none of your business," Kakashi said. All we learned was his name. Was the simultaneous thought of Team 7. "Okay, your turn, Pinky," Kakashi said. "My name is Haruno Sakura," she said, emphasizing her name. "My likes are," she turned to Sasuke and blushed. "My hobbies are," she looked at Sasuke again and blushed more. "My dreams are," she looked over at Sasuke and squealed slightly. "I hate Ino Pig." "Ook," Naruto thought. "Annoying," Sasuke thought. "Okay then," Kakashi thought. "Oh, Kakashi-sensei, are you and Naruto related somehow? With the silver hair and hiding your face thing?" she asked, causing the two mentioned to sweat drop. "Just a coincidence, I assure you," Kakashi said, turning his attention to Sasuke. "You with the attitude," Kakashi said, pointing at Sasuke. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like much and I have many dislikes. My hobbies are training," Sasuke said, pausing for a moment. "My dream is more of an ambition. To restore my clan and kill a certain man," he declared. Naruto rolled his eyes under his blindfold at that. "So cool," Sakura thought. "So far I have a lovesick girl and an attitude problem on my team. Well, like they say, third's the charm," Kakashi thought as he motioned for Naruto to go. Clearing his throat, Naruto began. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My motto is, better to be bluntly honest than deceivingly kind. I like my friends, ramen, training, and dreaming. I hate almost everything and anything that has to do with this village," Naruto said, surprising Sakura and Sasuke. "Hate? But he usually seems a lot more mellow than that," Sakura thought. Was Sasuke's thought. Not a big surprise there. Kakashi mused. "My hobbies are training, gardening, and working on a few things that you guys aren't hearing about yet because I honestly don't trust you." Everyone's sweat dropped at this. "And as for my dream, one of them at least, is to one day be at peace," Naruto said. Well, that was weird, Kakashi thought. Sakura was a bit more verbal with her thoughts. "What does that mean, Naruto?" Sakura asked. No offense, Sakura, but I'd like to get to know you better before we delve any further into my personal life," Naruto replied. Nodding in understanding, Sakura let it drop. "Well, now that we all know each other, let's cut to the chase," Kakashi said, pulling out a few slips of paper. "Meet at the designated time and area tomorrow for survival training, don't be late," Kakashi said, handing him the papers. "Oh, and don't eat breakfast," Kakashi said. "Why not, sensei?" Sakura asked. "You'll throw up," Kakashi replied before poofing away. Sasuke turned and started towards the door that led back to the stairway when Sakura asked him for a date. No, Sasuke answered, leaving the roof. Sakura turned back to find Naruto was leaning over the railing, letting the wind hit his face, his hair flowing on the breeze. Curious, Sakura went over to Naruto, determined to get a few answers out of him. Naruto, did you mean what you said? About hating the village? She asked. Sakura saw his shoulders slump slightly, and he let out a sigh. It was obvious he didn't like to talk about it. I meant every word, Naruto answered. Why? Sakura asked. I'm sorry Sakura, I don't trust you enough to tell you yet. Naruto answered. And why don't you trust anyone? Sakura asked. Once bitten, twice shy. Naruto answered before hopping off the roof and walking for home. Sakura stood there for a minute, trying to understand what he meant. After a few minutes, she finally sighed in resignation and left for home. Training Ground 7, 7 o'clock am. Team 7 found themselves waiting for a tardy Junin at 7 in the morning. Neither Sakura or Sasuke seemed to be morning people as they sat on the ground, half asleep. Naruto on the other hand, was used to being up at pretty much any hour of the day. The last time he'd actually slept through a whole night was, well, have I ever slept a full night? Naruto asked himself, chuckling mirthlessly at his own odd humor. With his spare time, he decided to get to know his teammates, kinda. Naruto studied the two, who really didn't notice due to them being half asleep. He couldn't use his chakra sense well enough to truly glean any knowledge about the two aside from the fact that they were there and roughly the size of a 12-year-old boy and girl respectively. Instead, Naruto focused on his other senses. Taking a quick whiff of the air, the first thing that Naruto smelled was the surrounding woods. From the trees to the animals, even the ground had its own distinctive scent. Pushing those smells to the back of his mind for the time being, he tried to search for the smells coming from his team. Sakura, who was sitting on Naruto's left side, smelled like some sort of cherry. Probably some sort of shampoo, Naruto thought. Taking another whiff, Naruto caught Sasuke's scent, which turned out to be tomato. Weird, Naruto thought, committing the scents to memory. As the day progressed, Naruto sat still and silent, studying his two teammates and learning about them. Overall, there wasn't much to learn. It seemed as though what you saw was what you got. Sasuke was cold and near emotionless, unless he got angry about something. He seemed easily goaded. Sakura was, in Naruto's opinion, a perfect example of the word shallow, after listening to her advances being rejected by Sasuke 9 times. However, he did notice that Sakura would do anything whatsoever for Sasuke, and was terrified of upsetting him, so agreed with anything and everything he said. Naruto decided to tune them out and focus on training his senses. His fight with Sasuke made him realize that he wouldn't always have a nice, preferably silent, area in which to fight. The class around them yelling and cheering had made it impossible for Naruto to discern Sasuke's footsteps, or hear him breathing. So, what better time than the present to train? Naruto calmed himself down, listening to the wind blow through the trees, hearing the leaves rustle and the occasional bird flying from limb to limb. Focusing more intently on his hearing, he tired to hear things that were happening further away. Some birds chirped, squirrels chattered, and a few branches groaned from the wind blowing, causing them to move. Focusing as hard as he could, Naruto heard a twig snap in the distance. He focused on it. There wasn't any noise again for a few minutes, and then a deer blew, spooked by something. Naruto could hear it running from whatever scared it. Happy with the focus he attained on his hearing, he was going to try and train it to become second nature. Getting up, Naruto walked over to a training post and started working on taijutsu, while trying to keep his focus on listening to his surroundings. Sakura had not been having a good morning. First, her sensei was late, going on an hour and a half now. Second, she was wishing she hadn't gone on that diet and skipped breakfast because she was starving now. And most importantly, she still couldn't get a date with Sasuke. She had absolutely no idea what she was doing wrong. She'd grown her hair out, stopped being friends with Ino Pig, even took the initiative and asked him out for dates instead of vice versa. She was beginning to get frustrated when she noticed Naruto stand up and begin pummeling a training post. He'd been so quiet she'd honestly forgot he was there. That was another thing that was bothering her. She noticed that Naruto actually got Sasuke's attention more than she did, which made her even more frustrated. She watched as Sasuke stood up and walked over to Naruto. "What are you doing, Naruto?" Sasuke asked. "I'm trying a new method of training." Naruto replied. What kind of training, Naruto? Sakura asked. Kinda hard to explain. Basically, I'm trying to train my ears. Naruto replied. By punching a log? Sasuke deadpanned. Naruto replied, unfazed. Sasuke scoffed at this. Dobi. And he walked off. Sakura, may I ask a slightly personal question? Naruto asked. Depends on the question, I guess. Sakura replied. Just out of curiosity, what do you see in that guy? Naruto asked, truly curious. Oh, Sasuke-kun? Well, he's strong, handsome, smart, and air. Sakura trailed off. Now that she said it out loud. Those were pretty much the only reasons she did like Sasuke. Do you know anything about him? Naruto asked. Sakura's mouth flew open, ready to spew hundreds of answers a second. But her brain seemed to be coming up empty besides one or two facts. Not really. Just that he survived the Uchiha massacre and I think he likes girls with long hair. Sakura said, questioning the hair bit. So, do you think that's a strong enough basis for a relationship? Naruto asked. No, I guess not. But what are you getting at? Sakura asked. Maybe you should try to get to know him somewhat before you start a relationship. You may not like what you find. Then again, you may like him even more. Naruto stated. Sakura gained a thoughtful look as she walked away, conversation over. Maybe Naruto is right, she thought to herself. I mean, I really don't know anything about Sasuke. And up until this point I only wanted a date with him because I thought he was cool. Now that I think about it, those reasons seem kinda shallow, if not selfish. She mused. She thought about it for the next half hour until she was finally brought out of her mental musings by Kakashi arriving. Hello team. Kakashi greeted, smiling under his mask. Hello Kakashi-sensei, was the somewhat lackluster greeting he got from Sakura. She seemed to be distracted by something. What's with her? Kakashi wondered. His other two students walked over to him, and after a nod of acknowledgement from Naruto and a death glare from Sasuke, he began to tell them what was going to happen that day. Here's what's going to happen, Kakashi said, pulling 2 silver bells and an alarm clock out of his utility pouch. You're going to have 2 hours to get a bell from me, using whatever tricks you deem necessary. The one who does not get a bell gets tied to one of those posts over there and watches while I eat lunch in front of them and is sent back to the academy. Kakashi said, gauging his team's reactions. Sasuke got a grim, determined look on his face at the news. Sakura seemed to have the same expression, though she also seemed slightly sickly looking. Looking at Naruto, Kakashi found his face unreadable. It was like trying to find defining characteristics on a blank canvas. Sighing slightly, he set the clock down on a post and set it for 2 hours. Remember, if you want a bell, come at me with intent to kill, otherwise you will fail. Kakashi said, pressing the button on the clock. Let the exam begin, the Cyclops said. The 3 genin leapt out of the clearing, hiding in various areas. Well, they're very good at hiding. I don't even know where Naruto went. Kakashi thought to himself. With Naruto an hour later. Naruto was deep in the woods, probably a good mile back from Kakashi and his teammates, trying to devise a plan. It wasn't going to well. He really couldn't think of anything that they could do together or alone to get those bells. Sasuke wouldn't want to work with him, and if he didn't, neither would Sakura. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud, very unladylike yawning noise. Wah! Good morning Naru-kun, said the 9-tailed demon fox sealed in his stomach. Good morning Q-chan. Naruto replied. She'd always called him Naru-kun, or something along those lines, so he returned the favor. He'd asked why she called him that on several different occasions, but all she'd do is give a polite little chuckle and say, you'll find out. What's going on anyways? The Kyuubi asked. She slept quite a bit, usually 2 days straight, and then she was up for a day. Not that she needed that much sleep, she just liked it that way. Survival training with Kakashi-sensei. Naruto answered. Ah, all right, I'll leave you alone for the time being then. Oh, and Naru-kun. Look out behind you. Wah, was all Naruto thought before he heard a twig snap. Naruto leapt away from the branch he'd been sitting on as Kakashi appeared, kicking where his head had been seconds ago. Naruto flipped in midair and landed on another branch parallel with Kakashi. Hello Kakashi-sensei, you're coming after us instead of us after you? Naruto asked, trying to buy time to come up with a quick plan. Well, the original idea was to have you guys come after me, but that didn't work so well. Kakashi replied, seemingly relaxed but never letting his guard down. Really, what happened? Naruto asked. He was curious, but he was also halfway through a plan in his head. He needed a little more time. Well, Sasuke came out to attack me head-on by himself. It wasn't a bad attempt, but he should have known better than to come at a Jun-in with no plan at all. Kakashi said, grinning slightly. Sakura fell to a genjutsu. I really hadn't been expecting to get her with it. Kakashi continued, his usual lazy voice. And now I came to get you, since it didn't seem like you were going to do anything. Kakashi finished. An idea suddenly struck Naruto. It was about 50-50, but better than nothing. Well, I usually can't stand not doing something, but I couldn't come up with a plan to take the bells from you myself or to get Sasuke and Sakura to work with me. Naruto replied, standing up and putting his hands on his hips. So, I guess I'll just have to fight you myself, he declared, throwing his arm up in the air. However, the over-exuberant movement caused him to fall off balance and fall backwards out of the tree. He landed hard on his stomach, groaning slightly. Kakashi's sweat dropped slightly. Really? Maybe we should take this fight to the ground then? Kakashi said, hopping off his branch. As he was in midair, 5 shuriken came buzzing at him from behind. Twisting in midair, Kakashi saw Sasuke, still in the throwing position. Kakashi faced him and went through a few hand signs. Before he could finish, however, a small tugging in the back of his mind alerted him to a genjutsu attempt. He let his shaped chakra go and made his chakra flow stop for a moment, releasing him from the genjutsu. He was about to turn his attention back to Sasuke when he heard running behind him. Naruto was coming at him, holding a short stick in his right hand, ready to swing it right across his body. However, Naruto swung too early and missed completely as Kakashi stood there, not like a stick was gonna hurt. What Kakashi didn't expect was for a kanabo to pop into existence in his left hand, brining up a follow-through blow into him, sending him sprawling into a tree. Damn, he hits like a freight train, Kakashi thought as he gingerly stood up. Looking down in surprise, he found that the bells were gone. When did he? Kakashi asked himself. Looking at the sun, he found it was time to go back. Maybe I'll get some answers here in a minute. When Kakashi came back into the clearing, he saw that Sasuke and Sakura were untied with a bell each, and all 3 of them were eating the bento lunches he'd brought. Walking up to the clearing, he stopped and politely waited until they were finished eating. Once everyone was done, he turned to Naruto. How were you able to get the bells from me? Kakashi asked. The other 2 looked up as well. Apparently, he'd made them wait until he got back so he wouldn't have to tell the story twice. Wiping his mouth on his sleeve, Naruto began. No questions until the end, please. Facing Kakashi, he began. When I fell out of the tree, I used that as a distraction to create a smokeless cage bushin in the forest, and then swap places with it. Once your attention was focused on the bushin, I made 2 more and had them henge into Sasuke and Sakura. I thought that would give me a surprise advantage since you would think they were still tied to the posts. Once I finished that, I had them wait until you were in air to have the Sasuke bushin throw the first volley of shuriken, getting you to turn around long enough for me to switch back with my clone. Then, I started running at you. I had the Sakura bushin attempt to get you in a genjutsu to keep you busy long enough to get within range to hit. When I did, I used the stick as a diversion so you wouldn't move back, thinking I was being stupid, for the follow-up attack. When I hit you into a specific tree I had the Sakura bushin hide behind. While you were still disoriented, she took the bells, brought them back to me, and then you can probably draw the rest of the lines from there. Naruto finished. Kakashi was impressed. That's a well-thought-out plan to come up with on the fly, Naruto, not to mention the fact that you can use Kage Bushin and Kawarmi so well. Kakashi thought. Well played, Naruto. If I may ask, how did you learn Kage Bushin? Kakashi asked. Naruto seemed to stiffen somewhat before answering. A long time ago, probably when I was around 4, I saw a chunin use it. It only has 1 hand sign, so I was able to memorize it. The difficult part was learning the exact amount of chakra to use so that it doesn't make smoke. Naruto answered. He had told the truth. He'd seen a chunin use it when he was 4. That, along with a horde of angry villagers, had been one of the last things he'd ever seen. And the Nanbo? Kakashi asked. Summoning tattoo. Naruto replied, showing him the tattoos on his hand. Kakashi nodded at this. Well, good work. Kakashi praised. However, it seems that you gave your hard-earned bells to Sasuke and Sakura. Why is that? Kakashi asked. Naruto let loose a small sigh and said, "With all due respect, Kakashi-sensei, I do not wish to be on a team that has no desire for me to be on it." Naruto stated, with maybe a hint of depression. Care to elaborate, Naruto? Kakashi asked. Nodding, Naruto started to explain. What I meant by that is exactly what it sounded like. Sasuke could care less about who was on the team so long as he got stronger. Sakura doesn't care who is on the team as long as she is with Sasuke, and no offense Kakashi-sensei, but going with my usual experience with adults, I'd say you wouldn't want me here either. Naruto finished, a slightly sad look on his face. I understand the bit about me, but for what it's worth, I don't think that about you, Kakashi said, getting a slight nod of appreciation from Naruto. Poor kid, Kakashi thought. Looking at his other two students, Sasuke looked indifferent, if not angry at Naruto, probably for showing him up. Sakura looked thoughtful, and slightly hurt, probably thinking about what he said about her. Well, sorry to say this Naruto, but I am passing this team, and since we need 3 people, guess you're stuck with us. Kakashi said, giving his infamous eye smile. Naruto sighed again, but with a hint of a smile this time. All right, well done team, meet at the bridge tomorrow for our first team assignment. Kakashi gave a small mock salute and disappeared. Hey Sasuke, do you want a G? No. Sasuke said, cutting Sakura off before she could finish her question. She looked sadly at the ground. Naruto, oblivious to her facial expression, just bade her farewell and left. I really need to change, Sakura said aloud to no one in particular. One wolf boy happened to catch it though, and smiled slightly. The next day, the team met Kakashi at the bridge and he took them to go get their first mission. Walking through the village, the group noticed the glares and some killing intent sent at Naruto, who seemed to ignore it. When asked about it, he'd reply with a simple, I don't want to talk about it. Letting it drop, the group walked into the mission room and found the Hokage. Team 7 reporting for a mission, Kakashi said. Sarutobi nodded and picked up one scroll, a decidedly devious glint in his eye. Being your first D-rank mission, we have a tradition to uphold. The Hokage said, giving them a serious look. It is of the utmost importance you pass this mission. It is a milestone in all Genin teams' lives. He continued, getting slightly scared, and grim looks from Team 7. Sakura let loose an audible gulp, parrying it wasn't anything too difficult. Sasuke had a grim, determined look on his face. Naruto, despite himself, was eager to get started. Kakashi had to hold back a silent chuckle at the facade. The Hokage must really be getting bored if he decided to start playing pranks himself. Team 7, your first D-rank mission is. Sarutobi paused for dramatic effect. Team 7 held their breath, waiting expectantly. Find missing pet Tora, the Hokage said in a suddenly lackluster voice. Team 7, with the exception of Kakashi, face faulted, leaving a chuckling Kakashi and Sarutobi. Team 7 stood in front of the third Hokage. It was just after noon, and they just finished catching Tora the cat, again. Naruto hated that cat with a passion. Every time they went after the thing, it shredded his clothes beyond recognition, this time included. However, this was his last set of clothes, which meant he was going to have to go clothes shopping here soon. Sighing, he turned his attention to the Hokage, who was saying something. Good work Team 7, your next D-rank mission will be. Just then a cat hissing and spitting sounded through the air, with a horrified, Tora. Right after it, Sarutobi sighed and started to finish his sentence. At this point in time, Naruto's wolf senses kicked in again, telling him to speak up. Sarutobi was just about to reassign Team 7 to hunting down Tora again when Naruto spoke up. With all due respect G-san, I think we have enough experience under our belt for a C-rank mission, and so help me Kami, if we have to go after that cat again I'll lose what little decency I have left. Naruto said, motioning to his shredded clothes. I have to agree with Naruto. Sasuke spoke up. After the first 2 to 3 weeks or so of being on the same team, Sasuke and Naruto had developed a decent friendship. Sasuke mellowed out somewhat. He still wanted revenge for his family, but it was almost like it had been put on a back burner for a while. If anyone brought up Itachi or anything else that got him mad, he was still stuck up and arrogant. I think we could do a higher ranked mission, and I really don't need to see an indecent Naruto. Sasuke finished as an afterthought. Sakura nodded in agreement. The only boy I am seeing naked is Sasuke-kun. Sakura said before she could stop herself. Upon realizing what she said and the looks she was getting, she had the modesty to blush. Sakura was doing better too. She wasn't nearly as loud as she used to be, which was a huge plus for Naruto. She had also started giving Sasuke some space, and only asked if Sasuke wanted to do something more like once a week than several times every day, for which Sasuke was grateful. The team had even gone out together on several occasions to eat together. They were becoming fast friends, and people Naruto trusted. Where I would normally be against a C-rank mission this early. I have to agree with the other two on the Naruto thing. Kakashi added. Naruto got slightly ticked after this. Kakashi was a big part of the team too, though no one knew how. Being lazy, unresponsive, chronically tardy, and perverted. Somehow he had still managed to wriggle his way into their hearts as a part of the team. Okay, I said it cause I won't have any more clothes left. Am I honestly that unattractive? Naruto asked in a rare social moment. Well, as far as men goes, I would hope that you're not trying to be attractive to them. Kakashi replied. Don't get me wrong, I'm not gay by any means, but still, the way you guys are going on about it, you make it seem like seeing me nude would be worse than seeing another guy nude. Naruto said, frowning slightly. Point taken Naruto, we'll lay off your looks since we have a partially biased judgment, due to the fact we're men, and leave it to Sakura. Sasuke said. Giving him a critical eye, Sakura walked around Naruto, looking him up and down. Well, it's not that you're unattractive, but I think it's more your attitude, you're always quiet and you keep to yourself. And Sasuke doesn't? Naruto asked. Sasuke's different, he has a reason for it. He survived the Uchiha clan massacre, he's had a hard life, you just do it to do it. Sakura said. Naruto growled at her somewhat. Sensing a sore subject, Sakura let it drop. There's no way Naruto's had a hard life, right? Sakura thought. They were cut out of their discussion by Sarutobi speaking. Well, I think you could handle a C-rank mission, let's see. Sarutobi said, fishing through scrolls until he found one he was satisfied with. Requested C-rank mission. Guard a master bridge builder on his way home to Wave Country from bandits. Do you accept this mission? Sarutobi asked. Team 7 sounded a unanimous, "Hi." Sarutobi nodded and waved for a Chunin to bring their client in. A man walked in through a large set of double doors. He wore a straw hat and wooden sandals with normal traveling clothes. He had a bottle of sake in his hand, and Naruto's guess would be he'd been long drunk, if the smell were any indication. The man looked over the team and scoffed. This is the team that's going to protect me? They look weak, especially the one with the rags. The man said, pointing at Naruto. Slightly aggravated, Naruto replied. These are my clothes, not rags. The bridge builder's eyes widened for a moment, as if in surprise. By Kami boy, have you no decency? The man asked. Naruto started twitching slightly. Fearing for their clients, or any innocent bystander's health, Kakashi stepped in. I assure you, my team is sufficient for the mission, and if not, I will be accompanying you as well. Team, meet at the North Gate tomorrow at 7, don't be late. Team 7 nodded and left, going their respectful ways. Naruto, speeding off to go ask some of his friends for help buying new clothes, and Sakura to ask Sasuke for a date. Hey, Sasuke, would you like to go get something to eat with me? Sakura asked. No, Sasuke replied, but this time instead of his usual cold-hearted no, he'd actually looked at her when he turned her down. That was a mistake. When Sasuke turned around he saw how put down Sakura looked, and it was because of him. Realizing that made his conscience eat away at him. A scene of rain clouds forming over Sakura and pouring rain as he walked away from her flashed through his mind for some reason. Damn conscious, Sasuke thought. Sakura had turned and was about to walk away. Sasuke spoke up again. Sorry Sakura, I am not really that hungry, but we can go for a walk if you like. He said. Sakura spun around, looking at Sasuke in disbelief. Her eyes lit up and a big smile pulled onto her face. She looks cute when she smiles. Did I just think that? Sasuke thought to himself. He had no time to wonder though as Sakura happily hooked her arm through his and dragged him off. What have I gotten myself into? Naruto sped through the town too fast for anyone to even notice who he was. As the ramen bar he frequented came into view, He slowed down until he was right in front of it. Walking in, he tried to find Ayame. To his surprise, he found both Ayame and Hinata there, talking about something or other. He walked up to the two and greeted them. "Hello Hinata-chan, Ayame-chan," Naruto said, getting their attention. "Hi Naruto-kun." Both girls began before trailing off, blushing beet red. Slightly unnerved by the silence, Naruto asked, "What's wrong?" Unknown to Naruto was to what extent his clothes were damaged. The gray pair of cargo pants he usually wore were gone, leaving only enough material to become, at best, a loincloth. The thin, long-sleeved shirt he wore was completely gone, not a thread of it in sight, and the white muscle shirt he wore under it was cut and ripped in several places, allowing the girls to catch glimpses of his skin stretched tight over his muscles. His muscles didn't bulge, but they definitely stood out. "Anyo. Na Naru Naruto-kun. WW what happened TT to your clothes?" "Ah. Well, you see, the majority of my clothes were shredded during some missions, so I need some more, preferably durable, clothes," Naruto said. The girls perked up at this and were instantly talking amongst themselves about where to go. "Oh, I know a nice place that sells fancy clothing over by the East Gate," Ayame said, a cute smile adorning her face. "Anyo, Naruto-kun says he needed durable clothing. I don't think that fancy clothing would be of much use," Hinata replied, an equally cute smile on her face. The conversation lasted for another 10 minutes before Naruto tried to interrupt. "Excuse me, if you could just quiet." He was cut off by a simultaneous shout from the two girls. Needless to say, he didn't open his mouth again unless asked to speak, and learned not to disturb women when they were talking about anything that had to do with clothes. Finally, an hour and 5 bowls of ramen later, the girls decided where to go. "Oh, I know a good place. A girl on my cousin's team, Tenten, lives in a ninja outfitter's store. I bet they'd have clothes that would be useful," Hinata said. After the three, Ayame and Hinata, Naruto just went along with it, decided where to go. Naruto paid for his ramen and they left the stand. Hinata and Ayame talked the entire way there, going on about what color would look good on Naruto or if he should buy certain articles of clothing or not. Naruto just remained quiet and followed after like a lost dog. Some of the husbands who were walking on the streets with their own wives saw this and sympathized with him somewhat. Demon or not, clothes shopping with a woman was never fun, at least not for the guy. The trio arrived at the outfitter's store at 3 in the afternoon. Walking in, they found a rather bored-looking girl sitting at the counter flipping through a weapons catalog. She had brown hair, done up in buns on her head. She wore a pink Chinese shirt and normal ninja pants. Hinata got her attention. "Tenten," Hinata called out in an unusually loud voice. The bun-haired girl looked up and smiled. "Hinata, what brings you here?" Tenten asked, jumping over the counter and crushing her friend in a hug. "Anyo, Naruto-kun needed some new clothes and asked Ayame and I to help him pick something out." "Ayame, Naruto-kun, this is my friend Tenten, and vice versa," Hinata said, introducing her friends to each other. "So you need some ninja clothes, huh? You came to the right place," Tenten said out loud, right after she leaned over and whispered in Hinata's ear. "So he's the guy, huh?" Tenten asked. Naruto, who had been training his hearing for the past few weeks, heard this and decided to listen in, smirking inwardly. "Yes, he's the one I was telling you about," Hinata replied. "It's good to know someone cares about me," Naruto thought. "Hey, I care about you Naru-kun," the Kyuubi said, in what could only be described as a pout. "Gomen, I know you do Q-chan, I didn't mean it that way," Naruto replied. "And besides, I am not sure I like that girl," the Kyuubi said, growling slightly. "Which one?" Naruto asked. He noticed Ayame walk over to the two and they began girl talk, which he had learned to stay out of, but when he heard his name mentioned, he couldn't help but listen in. "Wow, he sure knows how to make a first impression on a girl with the way he dresses. Don't you have any competition, Hinata?" Tenten asked, blushing slightly at the near-naked Naruto standing in front of her. "Well, kinda. You see, Hinata and I both like him, and we did have a kinda rivalry thing going, but then we decided we could share him." Ayame cut in. Naruto was stunned, and Kyuubi seemed to be radiating a horrified Arua. Two girls liked, and wanted to share him? When was he going to find out about this? "Hey, would you girls let me in on this with you?" Tenten asked. Much to the now horror of Naruto and outrage of Kyuubi, Ayame answered. Of course. That means less competition before other girls find him. We'll have a leg up on them. However, I think after this if any more girls want to join we should have a unanimous vote. After all, we don't want Naruto-kun to end up with someone who would hurt him. Ayame said. The girls all nodded at that. Outwardly Naruto was calm, and slightly grateful that they cared enough to watch out for him. Usually he didn't even go out of his way to talk to them, like they did for him. After realizing that, he felt bad about it. Maybe it was time to start trusting his friends. He didn't like not being sociable after all. I think I'll start opening up to them. Let them know I care about them too. Naruto thought to himself. Naruto was broken out of his thoughts however when Kyuubi started ranting. Those hussies. I was here first. If anyone's getting him it's me. I've been waiting 212 years and I am not about to lose him to some stinking mortal women. Kyuubi roared, though the waiting part caught Naruto's attention. Q-chan, what did you mean by waiting for 212 years? Naruto asked. Kyuubi seemed to stop ranting instantly and he felt an embarrassed sort of aura come off of her. Oops, you weren't supposed to know about that yet. Look, I'll tell you tonight while you sleep. In the meantime, I suggest you wake back up. Your girlfriends are talking to you. Kyuubi said. Naruto came back to earth to catch their question. So, what kind of clothes are you needing Naruto-kun? Tenten asked, emphasizing the kun. I need something sturdy, more durable than what I've been wearing, preferably dark-colored and loose-fitting that won't constrict my movements but won't get hung up on stuff either. Naruto answered. Nodding, the girls set to work. It was an interesting affair, clothes shopping with 3 girls. It was loud, tiresome, and weird. The girls were constantly talking and giggling, Naruto learning a fair bit about them, sometimes a bit more than he thought they would tell. He also had to wonder if they were dressing him up as a doll sometimes because he got the feeling after putting on a few outfits and hearing a few outbursts of giggling. Other times, particularly when Naruto was wearing some form-fitting clothes, he'd hear the giggling, and he thought he heard someone using a camera, but couldn't be sure. As he absently went through set after set of clothes, his mind began to wander to his other friends. He knew these girls liked him, and he didn't think they were doing it to just hurt him, but what about his other friends? Following that trail of thought, he began to view his friends, seeing who would accept him and who wouldn't. Well, let's see. I know Shikamaru pretty well. He may be lazy, but he's a good guy. He's never went out of his way to harm anyone before. Choji is pretty nice too. He usually goes out of his way to be nice, but it isn't a facade either, he just likes to be nice. Kiba. Kiba's pretty loud and brash. I'm not too sure about him. He's more of a rival than anything. I'll just have to play it by ear with him. Shino should be fine. I've known him for a long time, and if anything he can relate to something living inside you. Then there's the girls. Hinata seems trustworthy. If she's ever done anything out of spite I'd be surprised. Ino is kinda shallow. But only when it comes to guys she likes or something like that. I don't know, I'd have to get to know her better. All in all though, I think I could trust them. Naruto concluded. Then his mind went to his team. I think I could start trusting my team now too. Kakashi already knows my secret, or one of them anyway, and he seems like he couldn't care less. At first I thought Sakura was like Ino, but she has a little more to her than that. I almost see her as a sister. I think she could be trustworthy. And as far as Sasuke goes, he's getting better, slowly, but surely, I could give him a chance. He's like a brother to me as is. Kyuubi had a sort of almost agreeing feeling coming off her, and of all the people Naruto knew, she, along with Ayame, Teuchi, and the Hokage, was someone he trusted with his life. If she thought they were okay, then that was all Naruto needed to hear. Naruto came back to Earth just in time to hear Ayame. We're done Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and took the clothes Ayame offered to him. Stepping into a stall, he felt his way around the clothes and got them on in decent time. He stepped back out of the stall, and, not being able to see, Naruto decided to ask the girls their opinion. So girls, how'd I look? He asked. Naruto was now wearing a black muscle shirt under a dark gray vest that had various pockets. A pair of black cargo pants and combat boots. He wore a black, short-sleeved zip-up hoodie over the vest, hiding the vest's pockets. Lookin' good Naruto-kun, Ayame said with a grin. Tenten merely gave a thumbs up, though not nearly as exuberant as her sensei. Hinata just gave a small smile. Well girls, it's getting late, and I have my first C-rank mission tomorrow, so I need to get home and get to sleep. Naruto said, handing Tenten the money for a week's worth set of the clothes. As Naruto got to the door, he decided that, since he could trust them, he could let loose around them a little more. Turning back, he said, I heard everything you said tonight. He missed the looks of shock and then embarrassment on their faces as he left. Naruto walked home fairly quickly, wanting to know what Kyuubi had to say. He took a shower, ate a quick cup of ramen, brushed his teeth, combed his tail, and he was in bed. Not soon after he found himself in what appeared to be a sewer. Piping seemed to make up the ceiling above him and water covered the floor, coming up to his ankles. There were long hallways pretty much any direction you looked. Some led to his memories, which by far were the corridors Naruto liked the least. There were many doors that had thick chains locking them shut with various padlocks on them. The shadows seemed to move whenever you got too close to them. Then some halls were dedicated to what he was dreaming, and some of the few good memories he had. And last but not least, the hallway to the Kyuubi, which is the one he took tonight. You could always tell you were on the right track because the pipes above your head would steadily glow a brighter red as you walked, getting closer to the Kyuubi. Naruto turned a final right and found himself in a vast room. A majority of the piping seemed to come through this room. 3 of the walls were merely just that, walls, but one side of the room was made up of a giant wooden cage that was the Kyuubi's prison. Walking over to it, he found the giant fox sitting, apparently waiting for his arrival. Hello Naru-kun, I've been waiting for you. The Kyuubi said. Naruto nodded. So, what's this about having waited 212 years for something? Naruto asked. The Kyuubi sighed slightly, before looking him in the eye. He can see in his mindscape. I've got a lot to tell, so, make yourself comfortable. Kyuubi said. Naruto nodded and sat down on the floor. Kyuubi took a deep breath and began. First of all, I'm not centuries old or anything like that, I'm only 220. Kyuubi said. Naruto was surprised. Of all the things he'd expected, it wasn't that. The Kyuubi didn't give him much time to think on it as she began speaking again. In order for you to understand some parts of this story, you have to learn a bit about demons. As I'm sure you know, demons are not seen in the best light, often depicted as deceiving, war-hungry, bloodthirsty, etc. This description came from humans past and the legend was carried on through the generations. But there was a misconception. This is actually not true. Most demons detest war, and would rather spend their lives in peace. The thing demons hunger for most actually is knowledge, and they often spend their entire lives gaining knowledge. The Kyuubi explained. Curious, Naruto decided to voice his thoughts. I am not calling you a liar or anything Q-chan, but why would demons detest war? Naruto asked. Well, think about it Naruto, demons live forever until they are killed by something, and we thirst for knowledge. We cannot look for knowledge if we are dead, and we live such long lives, that if we were to have a war over every little thing, instead of just talking it out, we would literally be in a living hell. It is one of the reasons demons have honor codes. Because we live so long, if one of us were to gain a grudge, we would have eons to think of a plan for vengeance against that person, and that thirst for vengeance would be passed down to everyone in the line, until eventually you had a clan full of demons who wanted nothing out of their lives but vengeance. The Kyuubi explained. Oh, I see, that makes a lot of sense Q-chan. But that aside, what were you saying about a misconception? Naruto asked. Taking on a serious face, Kyuubi replied. Well, just as humans, not all demons like peace, some do like pain and suffering, and thrive in war, though they are very few. It is from them, and not from them, that this misunderstanding comes from. The Kyuubi said. Hold on a second, I'm confused. How can it come from them, and not come from them? Naruto asked. About 240 years ago I'd say, a group of demons came together and formed a plan to throw the world into war and chaos. A world in which they would thrive. The Kyuubi explained. The manner in which this group is at fault is because of how they went about their plan. Now, I don't know details since I was only 8 at the time the war ended, but I will tell what I know. This group of demons would take humans, other demons, animals, anything living, and turn them into a false demon, which is what the humans of past were describing, and what the new generating misunderstood. These changed humans, beasts, even plants, were bloodthirsty and savage, often attacking travelers, caravans, even whole villages went in force. Kyuubi said, finishing up her explanation. How wasn't it their fault? Naruto asked. Well, it was the humans who took their ancestors' warning message the wrong way, so humans are also partly at fault for the misconception as well. Kyuubi explained, earning a sweat drop from Naruto. Okay, so, what happened? Did the group win the war? Did humans and demons win the war? What? Naruto asked. I was getting to that, Naru-kun, be patient please. Now, regardless of what you have heard in myth, it is possible to kill a demon, or at least a lesser one. Demons like us Biju are usually too powerful to kill by human standards. So the humans did have a chance in the war, especially when the demons allied with them. It was a rather even war in the beginning, but as the false demons would capture villages and land in general, they would rise in numbers exponentially, giving them the advantage in the war. However, humans had on their side some of the demon clans, such as my own clan the Kitsune and the Tankui. One of the most important clans was the Ukami clan. The Ukami clan? Naruto asked. The Kyuubi nodded. Yes, this clan in particular was very strong. Now, we Kitsune are nothing to scoff at, but we usually rely on our intelligence to get us through a fight, just as the Tankui usually rely on trickery. The Ukami clan were one of the few melee-oriented clans, if you will. Like a true wolf, they have incredible stamina and strength, and pain tolerance like they didn't even feel pain. But they were not just blundering muscle-headed fools. They were quite intelligent, not so much as a Kitsune, but were one of the few clans that could hold a conversation with a Kitsune for more than 5 minutes at a time. Kyuubi said. Now, like I said, at the time I was not very old, so I don't remember much, but I know 2 things of the Ukami clan and of the war. The first of which is the Ukami clan were the ones to end the war, but at the price of the entire clan except for a few who were away. And the second, I was in an arranged marriage with the clan heir, who had yet to be born. Naruto nodded quickly, eager to learn more. At the time the Ukami clan defeated the false demons, and the real demons behind it, most of my clan was destroyed for some reason. I still don't know what to this day. The only reason I escaped was because I was away visiting my mother's sister, Meigo. I'm not sure how she got away, but the mother of the clan heir had made her way to the Kitsune clan house, the same time I did, only for the both of us to find it in shambles and everyone dead. We were both distraught, and went back to Meigo for help. Kyuubi's face scrunched up hard, trying to remember something. Meigo took us in and kept us safe for a month or 2, but it was nearing the time for the Ukami clan heir to be born. However, the heir's mother, I'm afraid I don't remember her name, said something about the war not being over, only postponed. I'm not sure what she meant by that. For some reason, she said that heir child needed to be born closer to the time of when the threat would return, so other surviving members of the Ukami clan might recognize him, something about easily recognized rite of passage or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, Meigo agreed to help her, and put her under some sort of deep sleep jutsu, but it cost Meigo her life, so I was left to guard my unborn husband and his mother. For over 150 years, I guarded her with my life, before 2 brothers came upon me, wanting to make a village. They asked me permission to make the village on the land I had claimed as my own, and I agreed, so long as they would help me protect the heir and his mother. However, I had to leave them, so I could try to figure out what the Ukami clan did to defeat, or rather, postpone the false demons, and see when they would come back. I was gone for near 50 years in search for it, but I found nothing. When I returned, I found the village of Konoha. However, when I came back to reassume my position of guarding the heir and his mother, the village attacked me, thinking me a threat because of my fox form. I tried to cause as little damage as possible to the village, but I had to defend myself. Hundreds upon hundreds of the village's ninja threw themselves at me, many burning to death on my fur, or I would accidentally step on them. I tried to tell them to stop, that I meant no harm, but they ignored me, thinking it a trick. Finally, the village Hokage arrived, but it was neither of the brothers whom I knew. Thinking me a threat to the village, he did the only thing he could and sealed me away into the only newborn at hand. The newborn came from the very women who I was trying to protect, who awoke and went into forced labor at my attack, and died giving birth to her son and my husband. That newborn was you, Naruto, heir to the proud Ukami clan, and fiancé to the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Samari. Kyuubi said, finishing her story. Naruto was silent for a moment, taking it all in. He believed Kyuubi, or as he now knew to call her, Samari. It was just a lot to absorb, and the fact that she didn't even know all the facts left a few open ends for questions. But it wasn't as if this whole ordeal surprised him. Not a lot did surprise him anymore. I don't suppose you would be able to tell me about my parents, would you, Samari? The kitsune shook her head solemnly, wishing she could tell him something. Naruto saw her depression and thought of a way to bring her out of it. So, am I engaged to a giant fox, or do you have a human form? Naruto asked, smirking a little. Samari looked up, slightly shocked. Wait, aren't you mad at me for the treatment you've received? For literally ruining your life? Samari asked. Frowning slightly, Naruto replied. Of course not, Samari-chan, it wasn't your fault. You're not the one who beat me, or abused me. You're the one who kept me sane all these years, even gave me my sight back to a degree. I am nothing but thankful for you. Naruto answered. A stray tear slid down the giant fox's face as she gave him a foxy smile. She began to change shape. She first began to shrink, her size diminishing to that of a human. Then, her fur started to disappear, and was replaced with a white kimono. Skin was now visible. A pale, almost shining white skin. The fox-turned woman in front of him was beautiful. She had snowy white hair and slitted blue eyes. A pair of white fox ears were perched atop her head and 9 white fox tails swayed back and forth behind her. The kimono she wore clung to her frame, revealing that she had an hourglass waist and a rather plentiful bust Naruto was having troubles looking away from. She had an almond face with full pouting lips and a cute button nose. She looked not a day older than 18. Samari noticed her fiancé's stare and blushed slightly. Wow, was all Naruto could say, causing Samari to smirk. Take that, mortal women, Samari thought to herself in silent victory. Naruto snapped out of his trance and brought Samari out of hers. Not that I don't like it, but what's with all the white? Naruto asked. I'm an Arctic fox demon. The only reason my fur is red when I transform is because I take after my father in fox form, and my mother in human form. Samari explained. Naruto nodded for a moment before shaking his head rapidly from left to right. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on a sec and let me get this straight. I'm heir to a clan of demon wolves whom before most of them died defeated some sort of false demon army, but only temporarily defeated them, and the army is supposed to come back at some point in time. So now I'm a clan head, who has to worry about the return of a false demon army, figure out a way to get my fiancé out of my stomach, how to put up with 4 possible wives, restore my clan, put up with my village, and be a ninja, all in one? Naruto asked. Hey, you are a ninja, you'll figure something out. Samari replied. Naruto sighed heavily. We'll talk more while you walk, it's time to get up now. Samari said. Her form gradually disappeared as Naruto woke up to start his first mission. Naruto woke up groggily. It was strange waking up after talking to the Kyuubi. It was like his mind was already sharp and awake, but the body hadn't caught up yet. Getting up off the bed, he found it was 6 in the morning. Not wanting to be late, he forestalled any conversation with the Kyuubi until he was walking. So he hurried through his usual morning activities and checked his gear twice, not wanting to be caught unprepared. After he was satisfied that he was prepared, he put on his genjutsu and headed toward the north gate. Once he was there, he checked his watch, finding that he still had a good 25 minutes. He spent 10 minutes doing a few warm-up stretches, making sure he was nice and limber. After that was done, he sat down on a nearby bench waiting for his team. 15 minutes later, the rest of Team 7 showed up. Sakura and Sasuke were still groggy, so they didn't bother asking Naruto about his new clothes or didn't notice. He suspected it was the latter. 5 minutes after that, Kakashi showed up with the bridge builder. Good morning, team. I believe we forgot introductions yesterday. This is Tazuna-san, the bridge builder we'll be protecting. Tazuna-san, this is my team, Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto. Kakashi said, taking care of the introductions. Sasuke grunted his greeting, Naruto nodded, as did Sakura. Tazuna gave a cheery, good morning, and they were off. Sasuke taking point, with Naruto off to Tazuna's left. Sakura was on Tazuna's right and Kakashi was bringing up the rear. It was by no means boring, at least for Naruto. He loved being out of the village, listening to the birds and wildlife around him. Many wonderful new smells, though with the occasional unwanted surprise, assaulting his nose. No villagers oppressing him, sending glares and threats at him. All this coupled with the fact that he was holding a steady conversation with his fiancée led to one of the nicest mornings he'd ever had. Samari had told him how to alter the seal just enough so that they could share his senses. If anything entered his nose, ears, mouth, they both heard, smelled, or tasted it respectively. Naruto was really happy for the first time in a long time. A puddle came into view up ahead on the side of the road. Naruto could hear the two men breathing in the puddle, and once they came into view, he could find them within his chakra dome easily. But Kakashi had made no move to do anything to them yet. Assuming he had his reasons, Naruto let it go. The group got not 5 feet from the puddle before two people rose out of it. They wore strange thing on their face that apparently let them breathe underwater with goggles that covered their eyes. They each had a linked chain gauntlet. They wore dark clothing and a cape. The duo ran at Kakashi and got him in their chain. They pulled and Kakashi was cut to pieces. One down, one of the two said. Sakura screamed, and the two ran at her, assuming she would be the easiest one to get past to get to Tazuna. Shit, Naruto swore, seeming to disappear. The brothers were right on top of Sakura, who seemed to have froze up in fear. Sasuke was yelling at her to move, but she didn't hear him. The chain was about to wrap around her when Naruto appeared in front of her, katana in hand. A swift stroke with the blade severed the chain, rendering it useless. Naruto rushed the one on his right, slashing and jabbing at his opponent who was dodging left and right. The other nin forgot Sakura and rushed towards Tazuna and Sasuke. Sasuke engaged the nin, fighting back with some speedy taijutsu. Naruto was fighting his nin, with seemingly mediocre sword skills. He sent an overzealous backhand swing at the nin, missing and leaving his body wide open. The nin saw an opening and took it, punching at Naruto's stomach. Before it got there though, the katana disappeared from Naruto's right hand, and reappeared in Naruto's left. Swinging left to right, Naruto cut the mont's arm in half, lengthwise. The ninja screamed in agony. At the end of the stroke, Naruto switched into a backhanded grip and brought the sword back, cutting the man's head and blood-curdling scream off. Naruto flicked his sword a few times, getting the excess blood off of it before wiping the harder-to-get stuff on the nin's clothing. Sasuke's fight was somewhat quicker. Sasuke had gone into the fight with some strong taijutsu, kicking and punching hard and dancing away from countering blows. The nin sent a viscous uppercut at Sasuke, that sent the boy up into the air. The enemy nin smirked, however, unknown to him. Sasuke had allowed himself to be hit. As he was flying through the air, Sasuke preformed the seals to one of his favorite jutsu. Great fireball technique, Sasuke whispered. The boy back-flipped in midair, setting him up perfectly with his target. The ebony-haired boy sent the fireball at the nin point blank. Not having any time to move, the nin threw up his arms to protect himself best he could. The ball of flame smashed into him, driving him into the ground. When the flame was out, Sasuke dropped into the hole and finished the fight with a chop to the nin's neck, knocking him unconscious. Seeing Sasuke's fight finished, Naruto picked up Sakura's scent and jogged over to her. Sakura seemed to be slightly shocked, as Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. Her head snapped up to look at him. "Are you okay, Sakura?" Naruto asked. The girl nodded. "Sasuke, are you and Tazuna okay?" Naruto yelled over at the boy. "We're fine, Naruto. What about you two?" he called back. Naruto gave him a thumbs up and walked Sakura over to the group. As he made it to them, Kakashi came out of the woods, clapping. "Wonderful job, team. Excellent ninjutsu, Sasuke. Naruto, you deserve an award for that acting skill of yours," Kakashi said, giving his infamous eye smile. Naruto gave a wolfish grin at that while the other three just looked confused. Walking up to Tazuna, Kakashi gave the man a stern look, causing him to sweat slightly. "We need to talk," Kakashi said, glaring at Tazuna slightly. Tazuna went on to tell the team about Wave Country's predicament. About how some tyrant named Gato was running the country by means of fear and squandering the island's ports for his own illegal dealings and such. If he could get the bridge he was building finished, he could break the hold Gato had over the island. After his story was told, and a small guilt trip that involved his family, Team 7 agreed to go through with the mission and help Tazuna complete his bridge. After walking for a ways, Team 7 had made it to a dock where one of Tazuna's friends were going to sneak the group in under the bridge. The bridge was huge, not really a marvel of engineering or anything, but still impressive. They were in a small boat, rowing and not using the motor to avoid noise. On either side of the small river they were on was a tree line, showing that the river had cut its way through the middle of a forest. No one was talking as the little boat floated along. Everyone was tense, apprehensive about the next fight that was sure to come. The fog that had settled over them, while it was good for cover, did nothing to settle their nerves, as it felt as though someone was watching them. Through the fog the wary ninja and bridge builder could see a wooden pier. The ferryman pushed the boat over to the pier and everyone got off the boat. Tazuna thanked the man as he left, disappearing into the mist. Normally, we would have gone in through the city, but we believe Gato has agents watching for me there, so I am hoping that by coming in through the forest, we can avoid detection, for today at least. Tazuna explained. Kakashi nodded, accepting the man's explanation. The pier was close to a path that led through a forest that Tazuna apparently knew. The forest was eerily quiet, and Naruto's hair was standing on end. He kept getting the feeling of being watched and couldn't shake it. The forest around them was thick, with trees and underbrush alike. Naruto caught a noise over to his right and flung a shuriken at it. A loud thunk represented the shuriken hitting wood. The others jumped at the sudden movement and held their breath. When nothing moved they looked at Naruto and he could feel their stares. What? I heard something, Naruto explained. Sakura walked over to where the shuriken was thrown to find a rabbit scared out of its mind. Naruto baka, you almost skewered a snow hare. Sakura scolded, walking back to the group. That's as far as you go alive. Unless you want to hand over the bridge builder, then I might be inclined to let the rest of you live. The man said, the same grin plastered on his face. Pulling his headband up, Kakashi spoke up. Momichi Zabuza, a rank missing nin from Kiri, once part of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Kakashi stated. Sakura shivered slightly at that. It didn't sound as though Kakashi was mad, or anything of that sort, but his voice dropped its usual lazy tone and had some sort of indescribable edge to it. With his headband fully pulled up, a 3-tomo red eye was visible. A soft gasp of surprise escaped Sasuke. Sakura didn't know what it was, so she didn't know what to make of it. Naruto, who couldn't see it, chose to ignore his teammates' reaction to whatever it was Kakashi did and stay focused on Zabuza. The missing nin let out a laugh and began speaking again. Well, look what we have here. Sharingan no Kakashi, or Copycat Kakashi, S-rank wanted ninja in the old Kiri bingo book. And to see the Sharingan this early on, what an honor. Zabuza said, giving a mock bow. I'll say it again, either I kill only the old man, or I kill all of you. Your choice, Kakashi. Zabuza said, sorry Zabuza, but if we did that, we wouldn't be very good ninja now would we? Kakashi mock questioned, whipping out a kunai. Grinning, Zabuza replied, ah, good choice Kakashi-san. Had you ran I'd have killed the old man then hunted you down on purpose for being cowards. Zabuza bent down and gripped the handle of his sword and kicked off the tree, ripping the sword from it and landing on the water a good 20 feet away. Zabuza started to gather a large amount of chakra, enough so the water he was standing on began to ripple and splash. After a few seconds he whispered something not even Naruto could pick up with his enhanced hearing and a thick mist started rolling in. Team, surround and protect Tazuna. Kakashi ordered. The 3 nodded and jumped to their positions. Sasuke was guarding Tazuna's back while Sakura had his left and Naruto his right. After a moment or so, the fog got so thick Kakashi, who was only about 3 meters away, disappeared from view. Nothing happened for a moment. Nothing but complete and utter silence. Then what felt like a massive, invisible force hit them, feeling like it was weighing them down several times over. Naruto actually had a reason to thank the villagers for once in his life as he figured it was killing intent. Naruto was completely unaffected by it. Living his entire life in a village of people who hated him gave him some immunity. After all, you can't get much further up the scale than several hundreds of people wishing so hard that you were dead for every day of your life that it actually manifested itself into force was pretty hard to beat. Sasuke and Sakura on the other hand were having a much harder time of it. Then Zabuza spoke up again. 8 possible choices. Liver, lungs, spine, jugular, carotid artery, brain, kidneys, heart. Which lethal blow shall I go for first? He asked. Naruto couldn't pinpoint his voice. It seemed to be coming from a bunch of different areas at once. Must have been some sort of jutsu. And he wasn't within the chakra dome yet, so he couldn't see him. However, Naruto found he had more pressing matters to deal with as he studied his teammates. Sakura looked absolutely paralyzed, completely still. It didn't appear as though she was even breathing, which would be a problem in a very short amount of time. Sasuke was visibly shaking. Naruto could even see his form in his chakra dome reaching for a kunai and beginning to point it at himself. Tezuna's heart was beating fast, too fast. If he didn't calm down, it was quite possible he could have a heart attack. Taking action before anything bad could happen, Naruto decided a little game was in order. Kakashi was on edge, more so than usual when facing a Junin-level opponent. Why? Because he had his genin team with him. He couldn't see them, hear them, anything. He didn't even hear their quick breathing once Zabuza unleashed his killing intent upon them. His worries weren't eased as Naruto's voice could be heard. Crap, Kakashi thought as he heard Naruto's voice float by. Nay, Sasuke, do you think he's compensating for something? Naruto asked, a wolfish grin on his face. Nothing moved. There was no noise, no movement, not even any thought as everybody tried to regain control of themselves. The killing intent was utterly gone. Whether Zabuza was in such disbelief the kid had just said what he said, or if Sasuke and Sakura were too preoccupied with the statement to notice was anybody's guess. Sasuke's mouth was open, agape with what he'd just heard. Sakura looked like a fish out of water. Her mouth would open to yell at Naruto about being vulgar, and then shut again, still not being capable of using sentences. Tezuna was undecided. The boy was either incredibly brave to a fault, or incredibly stupid. Samari was currently barking with laughter in Naruto's mind. If only he could see their expressions. That would have made her day. If anybody had been capable of paying attention to their surroundings at that point in time, they might have noticed a violently shaking figure up in a tree about 50 yards away. Wearing hunter nin garbs and a mask. The person's mask was off and their fist was stuffed in their mouth to keep from laughing. Oh my Kami, I can't believe someone actually said that to Zabuza-sama. It's a shame he's going to die now. I might have considered going out with him. A few seconds later, as everyone's minds started to work again, Zabuza started to chuckle. In a few seconds he was laughing hysterically. Harsh, bark-sounding laughs. After he finally calmed down, he grinned. Can't believe the punk actually said that. I like the kid. I might just have to offer him an apprenticeship or something after I kill everyone else, but I'll have to test him first. Kid, you got some big balls there, but can you back up your talk? Zabuza asked. Naruto saw him enter his chakra dome and stop behind him. As Naruto turned, summoning his katana to his hand, Zabuza kicked him. Naruto had been able to bring the katana up and block with the blade, but the sheer force of the kick snapped it in half and sent Naruto flying. He stopped very abruptly as he hit a tree 10 meters away. Shaking off the blow, he dropped the useless sword handle. Cheap blade. I am gonna kick that store owner's ass when I get back. Naruto said aloud. I would have to agree, that was a rather cheap blade. Zabuza replied, his voice once again coming from everywhere. Naruto summoned his kanabo and looked around. He didn't see Zabuza anywhere. Listening, he didn't hear anything at first. But then, almost a second later, Naruto could hear footsteps coming at him, coming up on his right. Zabuza appeared in his chakra dome again, this time swinging his sword from right to left, trying to chop Naruto in half. And you said I was compensating for something? Zabuza asked, as if making idle conversation. Naruto grinned as he brought his kanabo up just in time to keep from getting sliced. But the strength Zabuza put into his sword strikes were unfathomable. Unprepared for the vicious blow, the kanabo smacked against the side of Naruto's body. The sharp spikes piercing his skin. The momentum of the blade took over from there and sent Naruto flying through the rest of the tree he just hit. He flew a couple of meters into the forest and came to rest on the ground this time. Okay, now I know a little about what I am dealing with here. Naruto thought to himself. Damn man, you hit harder than a mule kicks. Naruto said. Ignoring the pain in his side, he stood again, getting into a ready stance, his club held in one hand and his body slightly turned. The other hand was open and ready to move. Again, Naruto heard Zabuza running at him, from behind this time. His chakra dome showed that Zabuza had his sword on his back, ready to draw it in an over-the-shoulder swing. Zabuza closed in and whipped the sword off his back, slashing at Naruto. The wolf boy was ready this time though as he blocked the blade, entering a deadlock with Zabuza. The two struggled for power for a moment, and it seemed as though Zabuza was winning. "I'm surprised you can keep up with my strength," Zabuza said, slightly impressed. Just as Zabuza was about to throw Naruto away from him, the boy ducked under the blade. The sudden loss of opposite force caused Zabuza to lose his balance, falling forward slightly. He took a step forward to keep himself from falling, but that was a mistake. When Naruto ducked, he had spun under the blade, giving his club some momentum. When Zabuza was forced to take the step, he stepped into the path of the club as Naruto spun. There was a sickening crack as Naruto nailed Zabuza right in the knee with the club, shattering it. Zabuza swore loudly, right before falling into a puddle of water. "Good technique, but not good enough," Zabuza cried. Appearing from nowhere on Naruto's right, Zabuza kicked the genin in the side. Naruto stumbled back a little but gained his balance in time to see the fist flying at his face. He leaned back enough to let the fist fly over him, then brought his foot up and kicked Zabuza in the stomach. Zabuza grunted a little before grabbing Naruto's leg. He grinned and began to spin in place. After a few moments he let go of Naruto's leg and sent him flying. Naruto flew upward, quickly getting at least 20 feet off the ground. "Maybe I shouldn't have enhanced that throw with chakra," Zabuza thought with a wicked grin. Zabuza watched as Naruto rapidly descended towards the ground as gravity pulled him down. The boy attempted a sloppy shoulder roll to take the brunt of the damage as he landed. His left shoulder shattered on impact. He rolled a few times before coming to a stop. His pink-haired teammate shrieked as she saw him fly out of nowhere and land in front of them. "Naruto, oh my Kami, are you alright?" she shrieked, freaking out. Naruto didn't answer at first, or move for that matter. Then he began to stir, and shakily stood up. "I'll live," Naruto replied, using his kanabo as a crutch. "Or will you?" Zabuza asked as he appeared in front of Naruto yet again, mid-swing. Kakashi, for lack of a better, more meaningful phrase, was pissed. Why? The moment Naruto had finished his little joke, Kakashi had turned to head towards him and help, only to meet a giant sword swinging at his face. He deflected the sword with a kunai and then flung it at Zabuza on the end of the sword. Zabuza had a surprised expression on his face before falling into water. Zabuza had been a water clone. After the first one, Kakashi had to fight 10 other, time-consuming clones before he could help his team, or, more specifically, Naruto. Why were the clones time-consuming? Because of the frustrating silent killing technique. You had to wait for them to make the first strike, and they were taking their time. Kakashi dispatched the last clone as he heard a loud crunch, followed by Naruto. "Oh my Kami, are you alright?" "I'll live," Naruto replied, using his kanabo as a crutch. "Or will you?" Zabuza asked as he appeared in front of Naruto yet again, mid-swing. Naruto had time to bring his kanabo up to block before the massive blade struck. Kakashi watched on in horror as the kanabo was knocked down and away. The boy didn't have the strength in his current state to deflect the blade, but protecting himself as much as he did had saved him. The Zanbato had knocked the kanabo down from Naruto's overhead guard, but in the process, knocked Naruto back. So instead of being cleaved in half, Naruto got a deep slash from his right shoulder, across his abdomen, to his left thigh. Shit, Sasuke swore as he saw the blood splatter all over. He couldn't move because he had to protect Tazuna, and Sakura would be no match for Zabuza. Where the hell was Wham? Kakashi appeared from nowhere, kneeing Zabuza in the face. The missing nin stumbled back, caught off guard by Kakashi. Kakashi pressed his advantage with some impressive taijutsu. Kakashi went through a flurry of blows. Punches and kicks were flying so fast it appeared as though Kakashi was blurring in and out of existence. Kakashi finished his brutal combo by jumping up and delivering the axe kick to Zabuza's right shoulder. His collarbone snapped, making his arm useless. Kakashi prepared to finish Zabuza off, going to stab Zabuza with a kunai. Someone beat him to it though as 2 senbon needles flew through the air and into Zabuza's neck. The missing nin's eyes widened in surprise before he fell to the ground in a limp heap. Kakashi traced the trajectory back to what appeared to be a hunter nin in a tree. "Thank you for softening Zabuza up for me. I've been chasing him for quite some time." the masked nin said. The nin then disappeared in a swirl of leaves and reappeared by Zabuza. You've a brave man over there. Not everyone would badmouth an A-rank missing nin just to help his friends. The nin said. Kakashi merely nodded his agreement as he watched the nin disappear in a swirl of leaves with the body of Zabuza. Lowering his headband, Kakashi could feel the chakra flowing to his Sharingan taper off. Are you guys okay? Kakashi asked as he ran over to Naruto. We're fine, sensei, but what about Naruto? Sasuke replied. When Kakashi got to Naruto, he found the boy was somehow still conscious, though barely. Checking the boy over, Kakashi sighed in relief. None of his wounds were fatal, but he could still die of blood loss. The gash on his chest was deep, but it didn't hit anything vital. His shoulder would heal with time. Before Kakashi could move, Naruto the boy grabbed his wrist in an iron grip. Relax, Naruto, you're going to be fine, but we have to move. Kakashi said. Naruto shook his head and spoke. Kakashi-sensei. Before you move me, you need to cover me in something. Naruto started, his breathing seemed labored, and it appeared as though he was concentrating on something. I'll explain why later, just do it. Naruto said, not giving any room for argument. Kakashi then realized that the genjutsu Naruto always used was wavering on and off as he could feel the illusion on the boy weakening. He must not want the others to see something. Kakashi thought. He nodded at Naruto and motioned Sasuke and Sakura over. Sasuke, Sakura, give me your raincoats. Kakashi demanded, seeing that Naruto was beginning to have serious trouble. The two looked at him weird, but only for a second as the tone in his voice was urgent. Taking the coats from their packs, they watched as Kakashi wrapped Naruto up into a cocoon-like state. Tazuna, who had been quiet, and quite pale up to this point, spoke up. Follow me, you'll all stay at my house, it's the least I can do, for that young man especially. The bridge builder said. Kakashi nodded his thanks. Picking Naruto up carefully as to not aggravate his wounds, they started running towards Tazuna's. While they were running, Sakura voiced a question. Tazuna and Sasuke had been wandering about. Kakashi-sensei, what did that person in the mask mean when they said Naruto was brave for helping us? How did he help us? Sakura asked. Shifting Naruto slightly so he was easier to carry, Kakashi answered. Do you remember when you first started protecting Tazuna when that mist rolled in? And it felt like you couldn't breathe, or you wanted to kill yourself? Kakashi asked. He knew what effect the killing intent had on the group. He hadn't been able to do anything about it though because Zabuza had sent that squad of water Bushins to keep him busy. It was the same reason he hadn't been able to help Naruto until he could. Sakura shivered slightly, the mere memory of that event scared her. Yes, what has that got to do with Naruto though? Sakura asked. What you guys were being affected by then was killing intent. Killing intent can be nasty, sometimes making you want to kill yourself just to get away from it. It can even cause some of your body functions to cease, like forgetting how to breathe. Kakashi explained. What Naruto did was he distracted Zabuza long enough so that you three could break loose from it. He saved your lives when he did that, but he paid a high price for it. Kakashi finished. Oh, Sakura said, falling quiet. He did that, for us? Sakura thought. Sasuke was having somewhat similar thoughts. What the hell did he do that for? Doesn't he have anything to live for himself? When he wakes up I swear I am going to kill him. Sasuke thought to himself. Tazuna was in awe of the boy. I still can't believe he did that for us. I mean, I know those two are his teammates, but I am a complete stranger. And he's strong too. I know I wouldn't be alive right now if I had faced Zabuza. Tazuna thought to himself. Kakashi was thinking slightly differently though. Naruto and I are going to have a very long talk when he's up again. He should be dead right now, having faced a Junin, and what kind of genjutsu takes priority to wounds such as these? Kakashi thought. The group soon made it to Tazuna's house where they were greeted by his daughter, Tsunami. Kinda. Father, you're back. I was getting war, oh my Kami. What happened to him? She screamed. Long story, tell y'all later. Right now we need a private room so I can tend to his wounds. Kakashi said. Tsunami nodded and led them to a room on the second story of the house. Kakashi thanked her as he passed her and told them to wait inside while he helped Naruto. When Kakashi unwrapped Naruto he was aghast. Kami. This is what Naruto meant by hating most of the village and anything to do with it. Kakashi thought when he saw Naruto's scars. He didn't notice the tail and ears right away as he was too focused on wrapping Naruto up in some bandages and setting his shoulder right so that it would heal properly. When he did see them though, which happened because he had to lift Naruto in order to get the bandages on him, it didn't really surprise him. Just another thing to add to the "what the hell" list for Naruto when he wakes up. Kakashi thought to himself. Satisfied with his work, he walked back outside, where everyone was waiting. "How is he?" Tazuna asked. "He'll be fine, he won't be walking anytime soon, but he'll live. Until he is awake though, no one is to go into that room. He's in a very unstable condition right now and even the slightest noise could put him into a coma." Kakashi said. That should give Naruto his privacy. Kakashi thought to himself as he noted the horrified looks on all their faces. Zuna's face split into a wicked grin as he spoke up again. "Well, what about my daughter? I mean, someone's going to have to bathe him after all." Tazuna said, straight-faced as possible. "Father," Tsunami yelled, making the old man laugh. Team 7's sweat dropped slightly at the perverted old man's humor. With Zabuza, the masked nin gently set the body of Zabuza down on the ground, face up. "Okay. I need to pull the needles out gently or I could kill him," the masked nin thought. Reaching a hand towards Zabuza's neck, the nin was forcibly stopped as Zabuza's eyes popped open and grabbed the nin's hands. "I'll do it myself," Zabuza said, reaching up and ripping the senbon out of his neck. "Gently now, or you really will die," the masked nin said, watching as Zabuza possibly maimed his voice box. "There was anything gentle about how you put me into that state?" Zabuza deadpanned. "Well, it had to be convincing, didn't it?" the masked nin replied. "True, so, what did you think about that group Haku?" Zabuza asked. The masked nin took off their mask revealing a very feminine face, even for a girl's standard. She had small pink lips and long black hair that fell down to her lower back. Her eyes were brown and her skin was a pale white. She seemed almost like a porcelain doll, and if one had to describe her dominating feature, it would probably have to be small, as her hands, lips, nose, ears, near everything was small on her body down to her bust. Personally, I think the pink-haired one is dead weight. The one with the black hair might have some talent, the Junin. Well, I believe you know more about him with you having studied him as a Kiri nin before. As for the silver-haired one, he is different, Haku replied, a small blush adorning her cheeks as she thought of the boy. Zabuza noticed the blush and decided a little game was in order. "Oh, in what way?" Zabuza asked, feigning ignorance. "Well, in just the time I saw him he seems to have a strange sort of personality. I'm not really sure how to describe it. He seems uncaring the way he moves around and doesn't really look at anyone when he talks, or didn't answer some of his team's questions when they talked to him. But, at the same time, he showed he did care for them by pulling you off of them. He seems to be goofy at times and utterly serious at others. In all honesty, I find him very interesting," Haku replied. Zabuza pulled a grin onto his face and said, "Oh, my little Haku is growing up, her first crush." Haku blushed as she realized what he said and began to speak again. "Even if it was a crush, it's not like I could go out with him anyways or anything. My first and ever-present concern is with you, Zabuza-sama," Haku said, bowing slightly. Haku raised back up and eyed Zabuza curiously. "Why, what do you think of the boy?" she asked. Zabuza sighed slightly, laying back onto the ground. "To be honest, Haku, I have a strange feeling about that boy, like he is going to have a huge affect on us. I'm not sure what to make of it, so we're just going to see where this goes." Haku nodded and got to work on healing Zabuza. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto woke up in front of Samari's cage, finding a worried Samari pacing back and forth. When she noticed he was awake, she rushed forward to the bars of her cage and spoke. "Naruto, you're awake. How are you feeling?" she asked. Getting up and stretching, Naruto walked over to her and replied, "I hurt like hell, but I think I'll be fine." Samari nodded and pulled Naruto into a hug as he got close enough to the cage. She then pulled away and grabbed a ear, pulling on it hard. "OWW. Hey, cut it, OAUGHHH, stop it." Naruto cried as he fell to his knees while Samari nearly ripped his ear off his skull. "If you ever make me worry about you that much again, I'll beat you until you can't move," Samari roared. Naruto nodded his head vigorously to show he understood and she let go. Getting back up from his knees, he rubbed his ear, wincing slightly. So, how long do you think it will take for me to be back up and on my feet again? Naruto asked. Samari seemed to brighten at that and gave Naruto a knowing smile. I found something out with your Ukami chakra. As of yet, you have not truly tapped into it. But since I know a little more about demon chakra than you do, I can tap into it for you and borrow some of it to help me heal you. So, more than likely, you should be good to go by tomorrow or the day after since none of the wounds were fatal. But I'd let your left shoulder rest for a while. Also, it would seem that you unlocked something when you killed that mist nin the other day. Samari said. Naruto gave her a confused look before saying, what do you mean I haven't truly tapped into my demon chakra? I mean, I am a full-fledged Ukami, so wouldn't I be using my demon chakra when I use jutsu? And what do you mean by unlocked? Naruto asked. Samari sighed slightly and started to explain. Not necessarily, some clans had a sort of trial you had to pass before you could do certain things. Like with M clan for instance. Before I could use the regenerative properties of my chakra, I had to be severely wounded so I would know just how much my regenerative powers were helping me, and not take them for granted. Samari explained. It is possible that your chakra has locked abilities you can't use until you meet certain requirements, but, looking at your past life, I guess the test for your regenerative properties isn't the same as mine was. So, technically, you do use demon chakra, you just can't use it to its full extent yet, Samari said. Naruto nodded to show his understanding and sighed, leaning up against the cage's bars. And what was it that I unlocked? Naruto asked. You unlocked the ability of Hiden, or ice. With this you should be able to do all kinds of interesting things with water. Just use your imagination and work with it. I don't know any ice techniques, so don't ask. Well, as I said before, I don't know a lot about your clan. But I do know that most everyone in the clan could use the ice element. I believe it was one of the things they were known for while they were still around. There were a few other clans who could use ice techniques, but your clan was known for some of the brilliant and powerful techniques it came up with. The fact that the clan were also Ukami, and the fact wolves are made for the snow, coupled to make the perfect element for them. Samari said. Thanks for clearing that up, Samari-chan. I wonder where I would be without you sometimes. I wish there was a way I could pay you back for all you've done for me. Naruto said. Samari blushed slightly as an idea came to her. Bending down she stuck her hands out through the bar and spun Naruto around so that he was facing her. Before he could do anything she pulled him into a long, deep kiss. Naruto, never having been kissed before, took a moment to get the feel for it as he started to kiss back, much to Samari's delight. After another moment or two Samari broke the kiss and sat back, blushing slightly. Wah? Naruto asked. Consider it thanking me for all I've done, and I want one a week at least with as much you get injured. Samari jibed. I wouldn't mind doing that once a day, Naruto replied, causing Samari to blush even more. The next day, Kakashi and his team were up bright and early for breakfast and training. Tsunami had been generous enough to fix them breakfast with what little food that was in the house, so the day was off to a good start. The night before, Kakashi had stayed up wondering about something, but he couldn't really put his finger on what it was that was bothering him. His mind would just wander from subject to subject. Currently his mind had wandered to the subject of the new Icha Icha book that was due to come out in a few months. He smiled and silently giggled as he sat down for breakfast. Sakura had been doing a lot of thinking since yesterday, trying to figure out exactly why Naruto did what he did. Many things passed through her head as she thought about it. About how Naruto could have, and almost did die. How he was able to survive against a Junin rank opponent, and if she were put in Naruto's shoes, would she have done the same thing? Sasuke was silently contemplating why Naruto had done what he did himself. Why would Naruto put his own life, his own goals, his own dreams at risk for people he barely even knew? Sasuke was unsure if he would have done it himself, given that he still had to kill Itachi and rebuild his clan. When his thoughts started on Itachi, Sasuke started his normal routine of brooding and doing anything and everything that was asked of him moodily. Tsunami and Tazuna weren't thinking much as they were both preoccupied with what they were doing. Tsunami cooking breakfast and Tazuna going over the plans for what he was doing on the bridge that day. Inari was currently out and about doing who knows what. They were all broken out of their respective thoughts as a sleepy morning broke through the silence. Kakashi's visible eye widened to immense proportions. Sasuke was once again openly gaping. Sakura blushed and fainted. Tazuna choked and spluttered on the coffee he was drinking. Tsunami turned around, gasped, blushed and then fainted. Naruto was standing in the doorway that led from the family room to the dining room, kitchen. He was shirtless from where Kakashi had bandaged him, the bandages stretching from his right shoulder, down and over his left hip and around his back. His finely toned muscles could be seen protruding through the bandages. His left arm was in a splint, keeping it in place so that the shoulder would heal properly. His headband was still securely tied to his head. He was covered in dried up blood and his hair was matted to his head. Oblivious to the unbelieving stares of those still conscious. "Nay, where is the shower and my stuff?" Naruto asked. "The shower is upstairs across from the room you were sleeping in. Your stuff is in that room too," Kakashi said, recovering from his mild shock first. Naruto nodded and headed upstairs. They could hear the sound of doors opening and closing, and then the shower running. 10 minutes later Tazuna was able to speak. "But, I thought, how?" Tazuna asked. "I have no idea, Tazuna-san," Kakashi replied. "How did he get so buff?" Tsunami asked, astounded someone his age could have that much muscle. "Why, are you interested?" Kakashi asked slyly, playing off of Tazuna's joke from the night before. Tsunami blushed again and started to stutter. What are why you kidding me, he's too young. And I have a child," she replied. "I'm older than I look," Naruto said, reappearing in the room, no one having noticed the shower turn off. Naruto was back in his usual attire, seemingly more awake than he was when he first came in. Truth be told, Naruto was 220 years old, even if a lot of that time was spent in the womb. "How old?" Sakura asked. "You wouldn't believe me if I said." Naruto replied, smirking a little at his inside joke. "Really? Well, if that's the case, we think Tsunami here may be interested," Tazuna said, grinning again. "Father," Tsunami cried out, bashing her old man over the head with a roller. "Is that so? Well, I apologize, Tsunami-san, but I don't think my girlfriends would like it very much if I came back from a mission with another girlfriend," Naruto replied, sitting down at the table. "Girlfriends? As in more than one?" Kakashi asked, his interests raised. "Yes," Naruto replied. "How many?" Tazuna asked. "3," Naruto replied, digging into the eggs and bacon Tsunami sat in front of him. "3?" Kakashi and Tazuna exclaimed, small stars in their eyes. "Well, technically 4, but I am engaged to one," Naruto said, inwardly smirking. "Engaged? Aren't you a little young for that?" Tsunami asked. Naruto wasn't able to answer as Tazuna and Kakashi disappeared. They both instantly appeared next to Naruto, bowing to him. "Please teach us your methods, Naruto-sama," they cried out simultaneously. "Sorry, I don't really have any methods, they found me," Naruto replied. Kakashi and Tazuna looked downtrodden as they mopped back to their seats, muttering about lucky bastards and such. "Oh, Naruto, after breakfast, you and I need to talk," Kakashi said, suddenly serious, getting Naruto's attention. "What about?" Naruto asked. "Well, if you're going to be receiving all of this female attention, you're going to need to know a thing or two. We're going to have the talk, and not to mention when to use and not to use a condom," Kakashi replied in the same serious tone, though smirking as Naruto started to choke on his food at the word condom. "God damn Ero-sensei. I am only 12. Kinda, it's too early to be thinking that kind of stuff," Naruto mentally ranted. "Oh, I don't know, Naruto, it's never too early to learn. I could go over it with you if you want, even give you a visual aid if you need it," Samari said in a seductive voice, teasingly sliding her kimono down one of her shoulders. Naruto turned bright red before he snapped out of it. "Gah, I am surrounded by perverts," Naruto cried out in both mind and real life. Samari pouted playfully as she tugged her kimono back up and Kakashi laughed at his student's expense. "Really though, Naruto, we need to talk about a few things I found while fixing you up," Kakashi said seriously. Naruto nodded and finished his breakfast. Kakashi motioned for Naruto to follow him and they both got up and left the house. The two walked for a way in silence until they got to a nearby wooded area. Kakashi stopped and turned to Naruto. "All right, Naruto, explain," Kakashi said. Naruto sighed and sat down on the ground, making himself comfortable. "Sit down, this will take a while," Naruto said. Naruto told Kakashi about everything, starting with the false demon war, and how humans had mistook their ancestors' warning. Next he told Kakashi about the demon clans and how they fought alongside the humans in the war, along with how the Ukami clan had somehow temporarily defeated them, but had lost most of its members in the process. Naruto told how Samari and his mother had gone to the Samari's aunt, and how Samari had protected him and his mother for near 150 years. Everything to the eventual rise of Konoha and Samari's attack. At the end of the story, Naruto looked up to see Kakashi had a contemplative look in his eye, as though he was thinking. Finally, he seemed to gather his thoughts and said, "You're still Naruto to me." Naruto smiled at this and said, "Thanks Kakashi OGG." Kakashi's sweat dropped at the endearing yet annoying title. "Oh, Naruto, one more thing. Why do you wear your headband over your eyes?" Kakashi asked. Naruto seemed to freeze for a moment, then looked towards his sensei. "If I show you this, you have to keep it, and everything else for that matter, a secret," Naruto said. Kakashi nodded, leaning forward slightly. Naruto sighed and reached behind his head, undoing the knot that held his headband on. As it fell off his head, Kakashi was mortified. "You're blind?" Kakashi asked, his voice quaking with rage, seeing the lines that went across Naruto's eyes, indicating someone had gouged them out. "Since the age of 4. Naruto replied solemnly, putting the headband back on. Kakashi openly gaped at this. "Someone did that to a 4-year-old? You're the third person besides Samari-chan and Iruka-sensei to know about this. I can trust you enough to keep the secret, right?" Naruto asked. Kakashi shook himself from his stupor. "Of course Naruto, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry," Kakashi said. Naruto just smiled and waved it off. "You didn't do anything, nothing to be sorry about," Naruto answered. "So, what are we doing today for training?" Naruto asked, changing the subject. "I'm going to have you 3 do the tree climbing exercise, if you know what I'm talking about," Kakashi answered. Kakashi-sensei, I've already did that and water walking with Samari-chan," Naruto answered. It was true, it was one of the few things Naruto was able to learn without being able to see. Naruto may not need chakra control for ninjutsu since he could do so little, but he could still use chakra to strengthen and heal himself, not to mention walking on water was just too cool to pass up in Naruto's opinion. What all have you covered with Samari?" Kakashi asked, using the Kichun's name. "Well, the chakra control exercises, how to use chakra to strengthen and heal myself, weapons, how to do the summoning tattoos, that was tricky, weapons training, hand-to-hand of what she knew, and weight training," Naruto finished. "No jutsu?" Kakashi asked. "I never got a chance to learn the hand signs before my incident, so I can only use one hand sign justus, like Kawarmi and Henge. I was lucky to see a Chunin use Kage Bushin when I was 3 and I committed the hand sign to memory," Naruto said. "Ah, I see. Okay, how about you guard the house?" Kakashi asked. "After I set Sasuke and Sakura up with tree climbing, I am going to be guarding Tazuna at the bridge. That should cover all our bases, shouldn't it?" Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded an affirmative and he and Kakashi walked back to the house. Walking in, they found everyone at the table. "Okay, Sakura, Sasuke, you 2 are coming with me to learn a new training exercise. Since Naruto already knows it, he's going to be staying here to guard Tsunami and the house," Kakashi said. Sasuke and Sakura nodded and got up to follow Kakashi. "Tazuna-san, if you would wait for just a little bit and let me set my team up with this exercise, we will go," Kakashi said. Tazuna nodded and Kakashi led Sasuke and Sakura out the door. "Oh, father, we're almost out of food again," Tsunami called from the kitchen. Tazuna sighed and called back. "Okay, I'll see what we can get at the store." "Hey, I could probably get you guys some free food. I think I have a scroll with vegetables in it somewhere and I could probably find a deer or something somewhere," Naruto volunteered. "Ah, you don't have to Naruto, you've already done quite a bit," Tazuna replied. "It's all right, I was getting kinda bored anyway," Naruto replied. "Weren't you supposed to stay and watch the house though?" Tazuna asked anxiously. "Oh, right, yeah, I can leave some shadow clones here to watch and help around," Naruto replied. "Shadow clones?" Tsunami questioned. Naruto nodded and brought his hands together in a cross and whispered. "Shadow clone jutsu." 10 Narutos popped into existence. Tazuna and Tsunami's eyes nearly popped out of their heads. "There, that should cover the home front. Do you need some clones to work with you at the bridge, Tazuna?" Naruto asked. I could always use more helping hands. How many can you make? Tazuna asked. Naruto once again brought his hands together and whispered his technique. There were a bunch of loud, simultaneous pops outside as 30 more Narutos poof into existence. You're not normal, even for a ninja, are you? Tazuna asked, eyeing the clones outside. You've got no idea. Naruto replied, smirking somewhat. Hopping out an open window, he set off for some nearby woods. Bah, what a show-off. One of the clones near Tsunami said, causing Tsunami to jump. You guys talk too? She asked. That's not all we can do, said another clone, winking at her. Tsunami blushed as the clones chuckled heartily with Tazuna. Kakashi walked in and motioned for Tazuna to come with him. Tazuna got up and left with Kakashi, their small clone army bringing up the rear. With Sasuke and Sakura. Gah, trees are the bane of my existence. Sasuke roared, much to Sakura's amusement. She was sitting on a tree branch at the top of her tree thinking how Naruto would wish he could have heard that. With Naruto. Naruto suddenly sneezed loudly, causing the deer he'd been stalking to snort and run off. Damn it, Naruto swore, giving chase from the treetops. Skipping along from branch to branch for 5 minutes, he finally got a clear shot at the deer and sent a shuriken whizzing at it. The deadly star hit the deer square in the head, dropping it right there. Naruto grinned and dropped down next to the deer. He retrieved his bloody shuriken and continued to cape the deer. After the deer was capped, Naruto picked it up and slung it around his neck like an oversized scarf. After a good 10 minutes of walking, a sound like whimpering caught his ear. His curiosity getting the better of him, Naruto changed course to head toward the noise. Another 2 minutes of walking through the woods at a steady upward slant brought him up on a wolf, who had its paw stuck in a bear trap. The wolf had a mixture of white and gray hair mixing all over, making it look a lot like snow on a mountainside. He seemed about the same size, if not a little longer than your average wolf with blue eyes. Naruto slung the deer off his shoulders and let it hit the ground with a loud thump, alerting the distressed wolf to his presence. The wolf looked up at him and its tail became stiff and level with the ground. Its hackles raised and it bared its teeth at Naruto in a "I'm fucking pissed, come near me and I'll bite something off" look. Naruto stopped and raised his hands, showing he didn't have anything. Whoa, easy there. I ain't gonna hurt ya. I am gonna help ya, Naruto said. Oddly enough, the wolf stopped growling, but still watched Naruto suspiciously. Naruto easily walked forward until he was near the wolf and bent down to its level. Kneeling on one leg, Naruto reached down to the trap's teeth and pushed down, forcing the jaws apart. The wolf brought its injured paw up out of the trap and hobbled away from it a few steps before Naruto let the trap snap shut. Turning around, Naruto smiled at the wolf and said, "There ya go." Much to Naruto's shock, a male voice answered, "Thanks." Naruto eyed the wolf wearily. "Did you just speak?" Naruto asked. The wolf seemed to give its own surprised look. "Did you understand me?" the wolf asked. "Yeah, I did," Naruto answered. The wolf's eyes seemed to widen to comical proportions before it quickly asked, "Are you a part of the Uzumaki clan?" Naruto nodded his head and replied, "Yeah, I'm the clan heir," Naruto answered. The wolf then did something Naruto did not expect. It bowed, remaining sitting upright, but his head looking down to the ground. "Hey, sorry about earlier, I wasn't sure if you were a threat or not," the wolf said, trailing off. "Hey, no problem. Name's Naruto, how about you?" Naruto asked. "I am called Aturu, part of the wolf companion family of the Uzumaki clan," Aturu answered in a boring tone, as if he was repeating a pre-written sentence. "Wolf companion?" Naruto asked. Aturu nodded. "Yes, you see, once a member of the family, like you, reached 10 years of age, they would gain a wolf companion," the wolf answered. "Hold on a sec. How have you lived for 150 years? And where is your partner?" Naruto asked. The wolf looked downtrodden for a moment before answering. When a wolf and an Uzumaki clan member become partners, they share a blood ritual. In doing so, it gives their wolf companion their lifespan. As for my partner, I lost her in the false demon war," Aturu said, a sad look on his face. "Oh, I'm sorry I brought up a painful memory," Naruto said. The wolf looked up and shook its head. "It's all right, Naruto, you didn't know," Aturu said. "Well, would y'all like to come back to where I am currently staying with me? I could take a look at your leg when we get there," Naruto said, pulling out a scroll. Well, of course, I'm not just going to up and leave one of the first decent people I've met in a while. Aturu answered. Naruto nodded and sealed the deer into the scroll he had brought out. Afterwards, he picked Aturu up, much to the wolf's displeasure, and began carrying him back to the house. Hey, what do you think you're doing? The wolf barked at him. What else? I'm carrying you back to the house. Naruto replied. I can walk perfectly fine on my own. Aturu retorted. Peeved, yay right. Your foot looks like it's just barely attached to your leg. So what? I look like a damned scarf right now. Aturu yipped. The two continued back to the house talking in this fashion, bickering back and forth and unknowingly becoming very fast friends. It was late that afternoon when they finally got back. Tsunami, being in the kitchen as usual, heard Naruto talking to someone and went outside to welcome him back. Welcome back, Naruto. Did you bring a fry? Tsunami said, trailing off slightly. Hey now, that's not nice to say about someone you haven't even met yet, though I do have to agree, from my description Sasuke does sound like an ass. The wolf let out a few snickering sort of yips that sounded almost like someone laughing and then barked a few times. Hey, now what's that supposed to mean? Naruto asked. The wolf gave what appeared to be a shrug and gave a few short barks in a deadpan sort of fashion. Hey, I just lugged your sorry ass for 2 hours out of the woods. The least you could do is show me a little respect. Naruto said in an annoyed fashion. The wolf let out a few more snickering yips and a single bark. Hey, you leave my girlfriends out of this. Naruto replied. Naruto, are you talking to that wolf? Tsunami asked. Naruto and the wolf stopped in their argument and looked up. They both had the modesty to look somewhat sheepish. Sorry about that, I didn't see you there, Tsunami-san. This is Aturu, by the way. Naruto said, nodding to the wolf on his shoulders. The wolf seemed to look her up and down and then looked at Naruto. It let out a low whine and she could have sworn she saw its eyebrows wiggle. No, she isn't one of my girlfriends, though with as much as people say that one of us may end up caving in and opting for it just to get people off our backs. Naruto said to the wolf, causing Tsunami to blush. The wolf let out another of its snickering yips. Tsunami quickly got over her embarrassment and possible beginnings to perverted thoughts. How can you understand what he is saying? She asked. Cause I am good like that. Naruto said, grinning. The wolf seemed to snort and let out a whine. Naruto coughed suddenly and, accidentally, shrugged the wolf off his shoulders, letting it fall on its butt. The wolf gave an indignant sort of growl but sat there with what appeared to be a wounded pride as Naruto smirked triumphantly. Naruto turned to Tsunami. Tsunami, do you know how to butcher a deer? Naruto asked. Ah, yes. Why, did you get one? She asked hopefully. Yeah, hold on and let me Naruto cried, jumping into the air. Tsunami looked down to see Aturu biting what appeared to be a tail that was coming off Naruto. The bite caused Naruto's genjutsu to break as a pair of wolf ears appeared on his head and his tail waved about furiously. You goddamn crazy ass son of a bitch! Naruto roared. He got down on all fours himself and bit Aturu's tail, causing the wolf to yelp and growl at him. The two were about to go at it when a loud squeal of kawaii made them both freeze. After the squeal, Naruto was vaguely aware that he was on the ground, and someone was on top of him, and his ears felt really good. Then he noticed the two big, fleshy mounds that were covering his mouth. So that's why I can't breathe. Naruto thought to himself. Kami Naruto, how much am I going to have to share you when I get out of here? Samari asked. Now's not the time, Sim-chan. Naruto replied. Tsunami was in her own little world, she had never seen anything so cute. And she loved to finger them and pet them and scratch them. These ears were like her own, personal little toy that no one else was allowed to touch. She was brought out of her world slightly as she heard something. She ignored it and continued rubbing the ears. She heard something again, and paused this time, listening. Soon. Tsunami. Tsunami-san. Looking down, she saw silverish hair, and under that, she saw a strange-looking headband. Oh! Tsunami cried, jumping up and off Naruto. Said boy shot up into a sitting position and inhaled a comically large amount of air, before he fell back to the ground. Meanwhile, Aturu was standing up to the side, beside himself in mirth. Oh, this is just too funny. I am definitely making Naruto my new partner. He brings life to everything he does. Why even a strangulation attempt made on him is enjoyable. Aturu thought as he watched the woman start to fret over the unconscious Naruto. Naruto woke up to the sound of someone saying his name. Naruto. Naruto-kun? Ga, what happened? Naruto asked. Looking right, he found Atoru, still chuckling. Looking to his left, he found his fleshy assassins from before dangerously close to his face. Whoa! Naruto cried, leaping back before Tsunami could accidentally strangle him again. Those things are dangerous, Naruto exclaimed, pointing at Tsunami's chest. The woman blushed bright red before changing the subject. Naruto-kun, where did you get those ears and that tail? She asked. I always has had them, I just hid them. Naruto explained, and with good reason it would seem. Atoru said, chuckling lightly. Anyway, before I forget or something happens again, here's that deer I got for dinner and those vegetables. Naruto said, pulling 2 scrolls out and unsealing the deer from one. Just holler at me when you need me to unseal the stuff from the other scroll. Naruto said, could you take care of the deer while I look at his foot, Tsunami? Naruto asked, bending down to check Atoru's foot. Of course, Naruto-kun, Tsunami replied, dragging the deer away. Well, it didn't get infected, looks like it just needs bandages and some ointment. Naruto said, okay, by the way, in all seriousness, thanks for your help today, Naruto. I'm not sure what would have happened if you hadn't shown up. Atoru said. Naruto smiled and replied, it was no problem. The moment of bonding was cut short as someone walked up on them. Naruto kawaii. Oomph. Atoru sighed, being around Naruto certainly wasn't boring. Inspecting the pink-haired woman who had just attached herself to him, Atoru sighed in relief. At least this one can't strangle him.